He was being brutally beaten by his former teammate. Once, he was the greatest sword genius of all. But 3 years ago, Ranson was sent on an impossible mission. He returned crippled, missing a hand and a leg, all because of his teammates' jealousy. Jealousy. Now he was beaten and humiliated every single day. But one day, he opened a strange book, written in a language he didn't even know he could read. The book began to glow and he vanished. He found himself inside a dungeon 10,000 years in the past. There, he obtained a legendary item and returned to the present. That item released his sealed power and healed his arms and legs. And now, the Sword Master Ranson was ready to begin his revenge. But before that, on the outskirts of Kushin City, a lonely castle stood in silence. A group of men enters the main hall. One of them questions whether the information is wrong, but believes it since it came from Lord Xia's. He then asks if he is the only one who sees no demonic beasts, not even an ant. The subordinate comments that the rumor of Chief Nagi's arrival must have spread. His companion agrees that this would make sense. They find themselves in a vast hall now in ruins. One of the men wonders what place that is since it was not on the map. Another points toward an exit with a staircase leading upward. Before them lies a staircase and a corridor. The subordinate looks at the map and says they should go up since the other path seems ominous. Nagi recalls that the IL Neon Gang was supposed to take care of the upper floor. He then points toward the corridor and states that they will go that way and with a gesture orders the group to move forward. But the subordinate questions the sudden order. Nagi insists that he go. The lackey then obeys his chief and turns to leave. Under the commander's gaze, he enters the dark corridor. From there, he turns around and reports that there is nothing there. Another man also reports to Nagi that there is nothing as a creature emerges behind him. The beast attacks the man. A pack of wolves emerges from the darkness. The creatures advance, and then the entire pack runs out of the corridor. A barrier rises from the ground, blocking the passage. One of the men reacts to the appearance of the creatures. The group now finds itself surrounded by wolves in the middle of the hall. One of them asks what they will do with so many demonic beasts. The commander grabs him and throws the question back at him. He shouts that if they want to live, then they must fight. Then he orders his men to move out and block the creatures. The beasts advance and attack the rest of the group. Nagi, the leader of the group, presses himself against the wall and then lets his sword fall to the ground. One of the wolves leaps toward him to attack, but the creature is struck in the neck by an arrow. The man watches the beast's body fall before him. The wolf now lies dead on the ground. On the upper floor, an archer asks if they want help. The commander recognizes him and calls out to his brother, Ranson. Ranson lands on the ground and comments that the timing was perfect. He then tells Nagi to watch closely. Ranson grips his weapon and declares that this is the level of a master swordsman. The wolf then lunges forward to attack, but he pierces the creature through its mouth. With a single strike, he cuts the animal in half. The other beasts rush toward him. Ranson then attacks and brings down the entire pack at once. The remaining men celebrate the victory of the newcomer. Ranson now stands amid the bodies of the wolves. Nagi approaches and praises him, saying that a master swordsman is on another level. He then wonders what reward Count Zeus will give him. Nagi claims that he could have handled all of that on his own. But Ranson replies that he is only first-rate with his mouth since his swordsmanship is low class. He then advises him to train more if he wants to become stronger. Nagi agrees with a smile on his face. He then states that he will have to do so. In the ruins of Ilnian in the city of Kushin, a camp has been set up. Burson runs toward Ranson and asks him about the reason for his delay. Ranson apologizes and says that unforeseen events occurred. Burson informs him that Count Zaze was there and that the situation is not good. Ranson then asks what happened. He hands him a scroll and says that the Count took the children. Ranson opens the scroll to read the message, but its contents leave him in shock. The scroll orders him to kill Delcasu and return. The Blood Count Delcasu is a powerful vampire who possesses true blood. He is also the master swordsman who rules the city of Kashu, making him Su's mortal enemy. And in order to receive Su's support, they end up doing all kinds of dirty work for him. Prince Ranson only wanted to leave that place with the children and live in peace. But Burson laments having been loyal to that wretch for more than 10 years. Ranson prepares to depart with his companions. His companion tries to stop him, reminding him that Count Delkshu is a pure-blood vampire. but he replies that he has no reason to live without his brothers. The man questions where he thinks he is going in his condition since he has just returned. He then replies that they cannot afford to lose any more time since the children have been taken. Burson insists that it is too dangerous since he has specialist-level vampires under his command. Ranson then calls him by name, Sir Burson, and declares that this is an order. The man lowers his head and agrees, addressing him as Your Highness. Ranson then orders Sir Burson to stay behind and take care of his brothers. He promises that he will surely win and return to fix everything. Burson watches as Ranson and his group move away. He then clenches his fist and decides that this time he cannot obey that order. In the continental year 1337, on March 11th, the kingdom of Vanroa is in flames. The queen of the kingdom of Vanroa orders them to take ransom and leave, saying that she will hold them off. But Burson, the commander of the knights, refuses and declares that he will stay to protect the queen. The queen then tells Sir Burson that what he must protect now is the bloodline of the kingdom of Vanroa. He hesitates to carry out the order. Kneeling before the second prince, she instructs him to survive at all costs. She then reminds him that he must also fulfill his duty to the royal family. The prince tells his mother that he does not want to flee alone. She then removes her necklace and places it around his neck, stating that it will surely help him. With one final request, she asks him to restore the Vanroa royal family. Her son swears to dedicate his life to serving His Highness as the sky burns in flames. Unable even to die, he narrowly escapes carrying only the second prince. He failed to protect them as the capital burned, and he was forced to flee without being able to protect either the king or the queen. Of all days, that day was precisely His Highness the second prince's 13th birthday. The prince who witnessed the death of his family looked upon the burning sky as the kingdom of Vanroa came to an end. The kingdom with its 500 years of history had perished. They reached the escape route and together with the last noble heirs and 20 knights, prepared to cross the border. On the April of the continental year 1337, they sail across a raging sea. Amid the storm, the group manages to cross the border into Raxium. On August 23rd of the same year, they finally arrive at their destination. The group enters Robberland, a lawless land that shelters criminals and fugitives from all over the world. After 2 months in the city of Kushan, many knights have died along the way and now only 12 remain. The second prince, Ranson, is now the only legitimate heir along with the last successors of the noble families. They must protect them even if dishonor and misery await them. Their journey leads them to the castle of Count Delcasu in the city of Kasu. Through a window they spot a hall filled with bodies. Burson cuts his way through the enemies inside the castle. He presses his wound and tells himself to endure a little longer. Then he runs toward where His Highness Ranson is, and he prays that he will please be safe. He finally reaches a blood-stained double door and opens it. Burson stops when he sees what lies inside. The throne hall is destroyed and filled with bodies. At the top of the staircase, Delcashu lies dead on his throne, a sword lodged in his chest. Burson looks around and asks what happened. After hearing a cough, he spots Ranson on the stairs and calls out to him. His eyes widen at the sight. The prince is lying on the steps gravely wounded. Ranson says that everything is already over. Burson asks if it is truly over. He then remembers the promise he made to the queen to protect the Vanroa bloodline. He wonders whether all their despair and hope will truly end like that. With a determined expression, he refuses to accept such an ending. He then declares that it cannot end this way. With his fist clenched, he approaches Ranson's body on the ground. Burson carries him on his back, determined to save His Highness. 3 years later, life goes on in the ruins of Ilnian in the city of Kushan. 2 children run and play together through the village. A young man with a prosthetic arm works at a construction site. Ransom pauses for a moment when Burson calls out to him. The older man walks toward him. From the top of a ladder, Ransom notices his arrival. The prosthetic on his leg slips off the step and he loses his balance. Burson supports him and asks if he is all right, but Ransom wants to know what the count said. He replies that, as always, the count told him to wait another month. Ransom says they can manage for now and then they will ask again next month. Burson reminds him that he told him not to do that kind of thing. But Ranson replies with a smile that he cannot ask the children to do it. His companion then comments that those children have already grown up. Even if they have grown up, Ranson begins to say something. Burson interrupts him and guesses that he was going to say that he would protect them. Ranson then finishes by saying that he would regret not having the elixir, and the man agrees. Known as the Potion of Life, the elixir is an ancient miracle found 200 years ago in the Ilnian dungeon. He states that this is merely an old story. Ranson then asks what that has to do with him, and Burson decides not to say anything more. The older man assumes that a miracle like that will not happen again. 3 youths run toward them calling out to the teacher. They shout for him to be careful as something falls from the sky. Ranson raises his arm and catches a falling sword. With the weapon in hand, he warns that he has just fixed the roof and will not do it again. He then returns the sword to the boy and advises him never to let it go again. The boy justifies himself saying that he was holding it tightly. But Ranson explains that it is not about gripping the sword tightly. He demonstrates that one must brace both legs and distribute the weight throughout the entire body. And then one must visualize the opponent in the mind. He recalls his own battle. In his memory he was cornered and wounded. Delcassou leaped toward him for the final attack. The Count swung his sword in a fierce strike. Delcassou told him that the more one has to protect, the heavier one's thoughts become. Then the vampire ordered him to die, but Ranson managed to block the blow with his sword. He declared that he could not die because he had something to protect. Delcassou grabbed him and delivered another attack. Blood splattered across his face as he defended himself. In his memory, he delivers the final blow against the Count. He grips the wooden sword firmly. Persona and the boy watch him as the wooden beam above them splits apart. The boy comments that Instructor Ranson tore the wooden dummy apart. Ranson looks at the training dummy now split in two. He apologizes, explaining that he was only trying to demonstrate the strike and that he will fix it. Another boy runs toward him calling out to Instructor Ranson. The young man arrives and announces that there is a big problem. He says that Daisy and Seclin are in trouble. Ranson's expression changes instantly. Inside a building, he realizes that something is wrong. He runs down the corridor, stating that this is more than a children's quarrel, because he smells blood. Ranson then shouts for the children. In a hall, Daisy and Seclin are facing each other with swords. The girl is Daisy of the Ilnian family. The boy is Seclin of the Ilnian family. Nagi greets him and comments that it has been a while, Brother Ranson. Ranson stares at him seriously. Nagi, Xia's vassal, asks what he thinks he is doing. He then explains that they are in the middle of an interview. Ranson repeats the word questioning the interview. Nagi says that if they show potential, he is thinking of making them his direct bloodline. He then asks how he dares to mix his blood with theirs. Nagi refers to him as brother and begins to say that even becoming the lowest bloodline would be better. It would be better than being under the command of a broken, crippled man without limbs. Then the protagonist asks whether Count Zeus knows about this. Nagi says that his brother truly does not understand the situation and asks whether he thinks a busy person cares about trivial matters. Ranson asks if he came on his own, even knowing that this is the territory of their family. He confirms that he knew and came because of a rumor that the great master swordsman Ranson lost his limbs, and all of that because of a few brats. Ranson questions what he just heard. Nagi taunts him, asking if he can even protect them with that body. He orders him to leave the children alone and go away in silence or else he will kill him. Nagi then mocks him and asks whether he even has the power to do that. Ranson rushes forward and attacks him with a punch. But 2 of Nagi's men block his attack with their swords. He then declares that they are no match and tells them not to underestimate a master swordsman. Urson warns them not to underestimate a master swordsman as Ranson crosses blades with the 2 men. He then tightens his grip on the hilt of his sword. With a single motion, he sends both opponents flying away. Nagi then praises Ranson, saying that he is still as incredible as ever. Ranson comments that newcomers these days have no sense of fear. Nagi simply asks him not to be so harsh. But Delcassou intervenes, stating that their opponent is a monster. Ranson remarks that Nagi still seems insecure around him. Delcassou repeats the word insecure with a smile, and then asks whether that insecurity is toward him as Daisy and Seclin watch. Nagi then draws his sword. Ranson realizes that there is no way out in his current condition. He prepares to decide the fight with a single strike. In an instant, Ranson lunges and strikes Nagi. Nagi manages to block Ranson's attack with his sword, but Ranson states that he caught him. Then he unleashes a flurry of strikes. Nagi counters with a single slash. Next, the blades of the two collide. Ranson's blade shatters upon impact. He then asks Ranson what happened to him, and Nagi reveals that his core is completely ruined, and Ranson questions him. He then asks whether Ranson truly thought he would not reach the highest ranks. Nagi raises his sword and declares that this is why bloodlines are superior. He turns to Ranson and asks what he should do with him now. Nagi then suggests killing them one by one as Daisy and Seclin stare at him. Burson tightens his grip on his sword, deciding that if it is a fight, he will lose anyway. He then sheathes his weapon. Burson simply calls out to Nagi. Ranson asks him to stop there, saying that there are children who need to be protected. Nagi merely laughs and asks what that is supposed to be. He then asks whether the master swordsman Ranson is begging him. Ranson admits that he is, stating that he knows him very well. He knows that what Nagi wants is to trample him and see him fall. Then Nagi sheathes his sword and says that he cannot let him escape so easily. He cracks his knuckles and says that he also needs to stretch a little. Next, Nagi lands a punch to Ranson's face. He follows up with another strike. Ranson crashes to the ground from the impact. He steps on Ranson's head as he tries to say something. Ranson finally manages to say that he is sorry. Nagi breaks into a smile. He then tells them not to go easy on him. Nagi announces that they will stop for today and continue tomorrow. Two boys approach the fallen Ranson and ask what they should do now that he has lost. But he replies that everything is fine because it was enough to protect them. Later in a room, Ranson questions Daisy and Seclin about the reason for their actions. He then asks whether they were truly trying to become bloodline relatives. Seclin apologizes to his master. Daisy remains silent with her arms crossed while the boy kneels beside her. Ranson asks if she has nothing to say. He then questions her about what she just said. Daisy asks why she cannot serve under Cassius' command. She reminds him that he himself was once his servant. She then asks him if he has forgotten. Ranson explains that because of Cassius' greedy desire to become a vampire, all of his companions and their families died, and he ended up like that. He then asks her if she now wants to crawl beneath him and asks whether she intends to live by sucking blood. Daisy stands up and retorts, asking what that has to do with him and whether he is her father. She declares that she will take care of her own life and demands that he stop interfering in her affairs and live his own life. Ranson calls out to her as she runs out of the room. Seclin calls out to his master and then says that Daisy did not mean any harm, and Ranson says that he knows. Seclin continues saying that sometimes it takes courage to kneel in a situation like that. He then tells Ranson that he must be in a lot of pain. Seclin says that he will ask Uncle Burson for a potion. Ranson thanks him as the young man leaves. Then Burson suddenly enters and asks if Ranson is alright, and Ranson asks him what happened. Burson begins to explain that earlier Lena told him something. She heard from Daisy that Ranson and Nagi were fighting and that it seemed someone might get hurt, so the girl went to him to ask for help. Lena simply calls out to her uncle. The girl asks why he told since Daisy had asked him to keep it a secret, and Burson confirms it. Ranson starts to laugh at the situation, and then he bursts into laughter. He thanks everyone for their concern as Bursoon hands him a potion. Ranson takes the vial and also thanks Daisy. Alone, he coughs. Ranson laments that if his core were intact, he could have dealt with Nagi. The scene shifts to two children running happily outside. He then corrects himself, stating that simply protecting the children is already enough. Ranson wonders what he will do since Nagi will return the next day. He decides that he has no choice but to use the object in his hand. Ranson activates the object in his hand. Then he decides to sell a royal treasure of the Van Roa family to raise funds and protect the children. He considers that the royal seal could be tracked by the Empire, so the only thing worth selling is something else. In the end, he pulls the Book of Destiny from a portal. Ranson opens the book and questions why it is considered a royal treasure. Ancient symbols then emanate from the pages. The book displays a date from the Rusiri's calendar describing the secret chapel of cultists filled with symbols. He is surprised that he is able to read the ancient language. Then the book completely envelopes him. A medallion with a star appears. The scene returns to the now empty room. Suddenly, Ranson finds himself among people running and wonders what is happening. He runs along with them, questioning why he is there when he was just reading the Book of Destiny. He stops and realizes that this is not an illusion, but a real place. He recognizes the location as the Ilnian dungeon, but wonders why it looks so new. Then the group stops and he questions what is happening and who those people are. One of the hooded men announces that an intruder has entered the chapel. He then orders them to secure the elixir first. Ranson reacts upon hearing the word elixir. He realizes that the structure is identical to the Ilnian dungeon, and that the elixir was excavated there in the year 3673 of the Rusira's calendar. This means that he has traveled 10,000 years into the past. The hooded men approach an altar where the elixir is displayed. Ranson watches the scene and confirms that all of it is real. The elixir is there, proving that he truly returned to the past. One of the men picks up a small vial and states that the elixir is secure. Ranson decides that if he can obtain the elixir, he will be able to recover everything he lost. He then counts a total of 12 people around him. He tightens his grip on the hilt of his sword, considering whether he should kill them all and take the elixir. But one of the men orders them to split into pairs and search for the intruder before taking the offering. One of the men assigns the tasks, sending Celtic and Crumb to the eastern passage and Sirung and Toten to the western one. He then assigns Seruiz and Ranson to the northern passage, and Ranson is surprised that he knows his name. He wonders why those people from the past recognize him as an ally. Ranson concludes that only a powerful mind-altering magic could cause this and questions what the Book of Destiny truly is. His new partner draws his attention, asking why he is standing there doing nothing. The man then urges him to hurry. Ransom decides that for now, he will gather information and look for an opportunity. The two walk together down the corridor. They then come across a woman, but she lunges forward and attacks his partner. He defeats her in a single motion. The attacker then turns toward Ranson. Ranson questions the transparent trail left by the strike. The man attacks, but Ranson blocks the blow with his sword. He then tightens his grip on his weapon with force. With a single movement, Ranson pushes him back. He then comments that the sword's durability is terrible. The attacker wonders whether that is a sword aura or something else. Ranson realizes that he is not the only one who finds the situation odd. He then decides to test it once more and readies his sword. Suddenly has a sharp realization. Two children appear hiding behind a pillar. They run behind Ranson, who asks why they are there. The man now protecting the children accuses him of having no shame for allying with cultists who kidnap children. She questions him, asking whether he plans to kidnap children and use them as living sacrifices. The scene then shifts to Bersund, serving a meal to his family. Ranson is also present at the table, smiling. Back in the present, other cultists arrive at the site and ask what happened. They then ask Ranson whether Saruas was defeated by the intruder, and he confirms it. Their leader then orders them to join forces. The cultists advance in a coordinated attack. The woman is surprised by the sudden assault as the children hide. Ranson turns to her and says that they should be on the same side. Two cultists run down the corridor toward them. One of them points at the fight and shouts that he found them. He then wonders whether Ranson was ambushed and orders them to help him. The woman crosses her sword with Ranson's. Ranson simply observes the scene. He then attacks one of the cultists from behind. Ranson stabs him, and the cultist accuses him of betrayal. Ranson then stands over the man's body. He thanks her for the small performance, which made it easy to kill him. He explains that the man attacked him recklessly, so he merely retaliated to save his own life. Ranson then asks her to continue helping him just as she is now. One of the cultist leaders approaches, stating that he cannot read that guy. He stops in front of the fallen bodies and asks Ranson whether that was a betrayal. The cultist comments that the resentful spirit of someone who died bitterly from betrayal is not bad at all. Ranson and the woman stare at him as he adds the chaotic nature of betrayal itself and states that with the soul of a noble knight, the Lord will be even more pleased. The woman laments not having called for reinforcements as she did not expect an advanced specialist to appear there. She glances to the side. The children cower behind her. She then corrects herself, stating that she is an intermediate-level specialist. The woman admits that she cannot defeat him alone and proposes attacking first so that Ranson can look for an opening. She then rushes forward and attacks the cultist. He blocks the strike and hits her with a punch. The woman prepares for a counter-attack, but he manages to evade her sword. The cultist smiles and prepares to deliver the finishing blow. She simply looks upward toward the imminent attack. Ranson watches the scene carefully. He then steps forward. In an instant, Ranson lunges forward at high speed. He then delivers a spinning slash against the cultist. Ranson's attack is blocked by an artifact and the woman watches the scene. She then rushes in to attack the cultist. He smiles and asks whether she thought he would have died without that. Then Ranson fights against the cultists. Ranson struggles to block the blows, unable to predict the path of the sword. The woman positions herself to attack the cultist from behind. She attacks, but he turns around and blocks her strike. The woman then turns to Ranson and asks what he is doing. She questions why he is so weak and he merely looks at his hand. The cultist taunts him, questioning the usefulness of his technique since he is nothing more than a mediocre swordsman. He then attacks her with a powerful blow. The woman is thrown away by the impact. The cultist prepares to attack again. He bids farewell to Ranson, who recalls all the work he endured under Count Kasaya's command. Then Ranson decides to show him what a mediocre attack can do. He then uses his aura thread technique. Ranson charges forward and attacks the cultist with his blade. The man is surprised as Ranson's power is on a completely different level than before. The two then collide in a mutual clash. Ranson strikes him with a giant hand formed by his technique. The cultist is hit by the attack. He stares at Ranson. Ranson then stabs him in the chest, but his sword breaks and he falls to the ground. The woman merely watches him from a distance, fallen. Ranson gets up and standing over the cultist's body, asks what he is. He then kneels down and begins to search the man's body. Ranson finds a small wooden box. He opens it and finds the elixir stating that it is there. Ranson prepares to drink the contents of the vial. The woman questions him about what he is doing. Then the cultist's body dissolves into particles as she calls out to him. A golden pocket watch appears. The scene shifts to ancient ruins under the moonlight. Daisy is outside wondering where her brother went at that hour of the night. She speaks with Burson saying that she needs to apologize to Ranson even though it is late. Daisy approaches the house wondering if he has already returned. Her eyes widen. She finds Ranson lying on the ground. The girl then calls out for her brother. Ranson is unconscious holding the wooden box. Beside Ranson's bed, Daisy and Burson watch him in silence. She says that she will stay by his side and Burson asks to be informed when he wakes up. Daisy then agrees with a simple nod. Alone, she continues to watch over him. Ranson remains unconscious on the bed with his injuries. She stares at him intently for a moment. Suddenly, Ranson moves on the bed. He raises his prosthetic hand and denies having drunk at all. Then he suddenly wakes up gasping. Ranson looks at his own hand confused. Then he turns and notices Daisy's presence. Relieved, she calls him brother and asks what happened, why he disappeared, and why he was covered in blood. He remains silent, leaving her confused by his lack of response. Ranson sits up and asks why she is staring at him like that, confirming that she called him brother. Embarrassed, she denies having said that, but he points out that her eyes and cheeks are swollen from crying. With a smile, Ranson asks if she was truly worried and Daisy confirms it, asking if she should not have been. He then thanks her and pats her head, and she complains that she is no longer a child. Ranson reflects that it had been a while since he last played around like that with Daisy. Suddenly, he brings his hand to his head and loses his balance. She panics and calls out to him as he leans toward the edge of the bed. Ranson looks at his hand and realizes that it was not a dream. It was real. Daisy questions him about his body and then removes his arm prosthesis. Ranson stands up and declares that his body has returned. He staggers forward declaring that he has returned. Then he collapses to the floor and Daisy screams his name. Voices echo about his arms and legs having grown back and warnings not to pull his arm. Ranson slowly opens his eyes confused. Bersund, Daisy, Seklin, and little Lena stare down at him. Bersund asks Ranson how such a miracle could have happened. He reveals that he drank an elixir, leaving Bersund shocked by the cost of 50,000 dalens for a single sip. Ranson says that first he needs to check something and lifts the blanket. Bersund asks if he can move and Ranson replies that he may need rehabilitation, but he will be fine. He approaches a dresser and picks up a small wooden box. Ranson asks Bersund to accompany him and he agrees. Together, they look at an empty altar where the elixir should have been. Bersund asks him what is going on, but Ranson admits that he also cannot believe the situation. He opens the box revealing a key and says that he needs to check something. A memory shows that security was especially reinforced around the key. This leads him to conclude that it is the key to opening a secret space. He raises the key and a summoning circle manifests from it. The circle then rapidly expands around the two of them. Ranson wonders what it is. Before them, a secret room is revealed containing treasures and a mannequin wearing a cloak. The gold coins alone are worth 5,000 dalens, and beyond that, there are artifacts, ancient swords and armor, and even basic tools. Burson questions Ranson about how all of this happened. First with his limbs regenerated, and now this. With a hand on the back of his neck, Ranson admits that he also cannot believe it. Ranson then reveals that he traveled to that very same place 10,000 years in the past. The revelation leaves Burson completely shocked by what he heard. Then he realizes that everything was real. Ranson wonders whether the artifact's power is not single-use and whether he can return to the past repeatedly. He calls out to Burson and states that there is something he needs to do first. Elsewhere, Delcasu smiles with satisfaction. He stretches on a bed surrounded by bodies on the floor and comments that this is what it means to live. He calls out to Ranson and asks whether they should go see that trash. When he opens the door, he comes face to face with Ranson and asks what that is. Nagi asks if Ranson came there to greet him, but then he notices Ranson's arms and legs and questions him. Nagi orders his men to quickly inform the Lord that Ranson has recovered his core. Ranson draws his sword in response and lunges forward with a swift slash. The attack surprises one of Nagi's men. The strike hits him squarely in the chest and the other man is struck the same way. Nagi stares at him, unable to understand how that was possible. Ranson tightens his grip and charges toward Nagi. He runs across the hall ready to attack. Nagi draws his sword to defend himself, then he blocks Ranson's strike. With a smile, he asks whether Ranson intends to fight using an aura thread instead of a full blade. Nagi realizes that Ranson's core has not fully recovered yet. Ranson grips his sword firmly. He simply asks, "So what?" Then Ranson prepares to attack again. Nagi takes a combat stance, stating that he is different from 3 years ago and that he is now an E-class noble. He boasts about his superior physique and his immortal regenerative ability. He would be a worthy opponent even for a master swordsman. Ranson's attack surges toward Nagi. He is struck head-on by the blow and Nagi's head is severed from his body by the sword strike. The decapitated body then dissolves into particles before Ranson. He kneels and states that his core has recovered, but he still needs to gather his aura again. At another time, Daisy asks him whether he truly went back to the past and drank the elixir. Ranson confirms it and explains that he used a treasure of the Vanro royal family to return to the past. Her son then asks whether he can return again, but Ranson says he does not know since the item no longer showed any reaction. A woman named Samelin expresses her doubts, suggesting that perhaps an artifact from the Age of Magic could make it possible. Ranson reflects on whether something so small could truly contain divine power, no matter how ancient the technology. Daisy interrupts him, questioning the elixir discovered 200 years ago since he drank it 10,000 years ago. He then realizes something and exclaims that she is right, leaving her confused. Ranson remembers that he drank only half of the elixir before returning. He asks Burson whether there is any record that only half of the elixir was found, but Burson has never heard about the quantity. With his hands raised, Ranson concludes that in that case it is impossible to know. They wonder whether a complete elixir was originally discovered or whether history was altered because Ranson drank half of it. Samelin then warns him that if he can return to the past again, what he did there could change the entire world. Ranson is asked what he would wish to achieve if he could change the past. He reflects for a moment on his objective. His first goal is revenge for losing his parents and siblings overnight, and his duty as the last member of the Van Roa royal family is the reconstruction of the kingdom. But Ranson states that to do that, he must first kill Count Seus. He remembers when he believed that his family's safety would be guaranteed if he became a vassal of the Lord of Kushin. But he realizes that happiness gained through another person's hands cannot be firm. Samelin warns him that Count Seus is strong as he was already a master swordsman and has now taken Delcasu's true blood. Ranson says that this is not an option and wonders how Seus will react when he discovers how insane he has become. Gathered around the table, he declares that this is an unavoidable fight for everyone. He then informs them that the tax report that must be submitted to Count Seus is due in 3 weeks. Ranson states with conviction that they must settle the matter before then. Ranson trains alone with his sword in a ruined arena. He recalls the swordsmanship used by the cult members 10,000 years ago. It was a persistent and solid technique possessing a cutting energy. One of the cultists mocked the usefulness of an aura blade and called him a mediocre swordsman who could not read the mind of the sword. But Ranson feels as if he is conversing with the blade itself, or rather as if he has become the sword itself. Then he opens his eyes with a new perception. He grips the weapon and declares that he now understands. Ranson states that it is definitely not an aura. Daisy runs toward him, shouting that something terrible has happened. The mention of Count Zeus' name puts him on alert. In his hall, a man informs the Lord that Ranson's family has been invited to the castle in 3 days. Delcasu states that he has waited a long time for the nobles of the kingdom of Manhwa, and that the time has finally come to use them as sacrifices. Ranson reflects that there are only 3 weeks left until the tax deadline, and now the Count suddenly invites them. Urson raises the possibility that the Count has discovered Nagi's death, but Ranson doubts it, believing that he would blame the rebels. Simolan intervenes, saying that the real problem is that their plan to assassinate the Count was ruined by the sudden invitation. She reveals that their only chance was when Count Zeus performed his ritual, piquing Ranson's curiosity. Simolan explains that since what happened to his brother, the Count leaves the castle once a month to perform a ritual alone. Daisy adds that she also saw Zeus men kidnapping children. Saint Milan concludes by stating that villages unable to pay taxes were exterminated and that everyone, both bodies and children, is used as sacrifices. Ranson asks why he would prepare corpses and living offerings to abase himself before a being he does not even understand. He laments how much everything changed while he was confined at home with his injured limbs. Ransom then asks C. Milan how she knows all of this. She simply replies that she has an information network. He grows agitated, questioning how she went alone to such a dangerous city. Saint Milan simply reinforces that their plan has been completely ruined. Urson comments that Sia is already 20 years old and an adult, but Ranson retorts that it is still dangerous for her to walk through the city alone. Daisy then calls him brother. She asks him whether he can truly defeat Zeus. Holding his sword, Ranson replies firmly that he must. He then places the blade on the table and states that with it, they have a chance. Urson recognizes it as the king's sword, a weapon forged by refining celestial silver steel with aura. Ranson raises it and declares that corrupted beings like vampires cannot withstand this blade. C. Milan says that she believes in him and that if they fail, they can simply die together. Her declaration leaves him visibly surprised. She then closes her eyes and says that she was only joking. Simolan concludes that, in any case, they need to find another way to kill Count Shoes. Ranson states that it is risky, but it may be the only option at the moment. The scene shifts to the village of Rara, where some children run through a field. One of the boys shows an enormous mushroom he found, but his friend claims his is even bigger. Excited, one of them runs off, suggesting they go home to measure which one is bigger. The village is suddenly engulfed in a massive fire. Frightened, the villagers wonder what is happening. A knight attacks one of the villagers with his sword. Another man is stabbed from behind by a soldier. A body is then unceremoniously thrown onto a cart. The knights observe the destruction they have caused. They spot the children and order that no one be allowed to escape. A group of soldiers approaches the boys. The boys find themselves cornered by the knights. An arrow is fired at high speed. The projectile strikes one of the knights in the head. More arrows instantly bring down 2 other soldiers. The children look in surprise toward the direction from which the shots came. An archer approaches and asks if they are all right. One of the boys asks him who he is. He introduces himself as Liberapete Randa. The children repeat the name confused. Then they recognize him as the Baron. Randa says that they will talk in detail later. For now, he says they need to leave that place. One of the boys shouts that his mother is still there, but Randa pulls them away from the fire. He realizes that no matter how many of his men they kill, it is impossible to stop it. Randa watches the village in flames and concludes that the Count has truly crossed the point of no return. The scene shifts to the Count's castle under the light of the full moon. Inside the walls, carts carrying covered bodies are lined up. A soldier oversees the line of carts. A subordinate informs Delcasu that a total of 116 bodies were brought in, more than the designated quota. Delcasu says that he will take care of the rest and dismisses him. He approaches one of the bodies and pulls back the sheet covering it. He rises from one of the bodies and wipes his mouth. With a smile, he comments that Ranson's group will enter the palace tomorrow and that the moment he has long awaited is approaching. Then he turns to walk away from the pile of bodies. Suddenly, a hand moves beneath one of the sheets and Delcasu stops and turns, sensing the disturbance. A sword is swiftly drawn from beneath the sheet. A wave of energy erupts from the cart toward Delcasu. In an earlier conversation, Shyamalan informs that according to intelligence, the bodies from the village of Roera will be transported today. She then instructs her brother to pretend to be dead and infiltrate the cart. That way, he would be delivered directly to the Count and must suppress his mana until then. The plan was to attack when the Count lowered his guard. Delcasu blocks the strike and asks what brings him there without notice. Ranson strains against his defense and admits that he knew it would not be easy. Delcasu comments that Ranson's body has healed and congratulates him for perhaps having found an elixir. Ranson realizes that the strategy has reached its limit and that in the end they will have to face each other. Then Delcasu prepares for combat and calls out to him. He invites him to give him the taste of a delicious despair. Ranson focuses and assumes his stance with the sword. He feels the connection with his blade, his eyes preparing to read the heart of the sword. Then the two charge forward and their blades collide. Delcasu is hurled backward by the force of the impact. He recovers and unleashes a wide horizontal attack. Ranson jumps to evade the blow. He lands and turns back toward his opponent. Delcasu charges toward him once again. Ranson prepares for the next move. Delcasu fixes him with an intense stare. Ranson slides across the ground, dodging the attack as it passes by him. He then spins and delivers a swift strike toward Delcasu's neck, but the vampire manages to block the blade at the last second. Delcasu remarks that it was impressive, for if his aura had been weaker, his neck would have been severed. He adds that this was to be expected of the kingdom of Banroa. A new voice reveals that he must be the missing second prince of Banroa whose body was never found. Delcasu merely comments on how precious that is. He then states that by offering such a valuable soul, his wish will surely be fulfilled. Ranson advances with a powerful arcing strike. Delcasu declares that it is useless no matter how many times he tries. He then blocks the blade with his hand and claims that the sword will never pierce his aura. Ranson presses his blade harder against Delcasu's hand. Then their powers collide, causing a massive explosion. Elsewhere in the city, the night remains calm under the full moon. Nagi is sitting at a table outside a tavern with a companion. His men approach and ask why he called them. One of them asks if he is planning to stir up some major trouble. Nagi replies that no, but that he received information that something unusual might happen. Another member of the group then asks what kind of information he received. Suddenly, all of them react to a massive tremor. In the distance, they see the collision of energies and wonder if Count Celsius is fighting someone. The men ask if this was what the chief was talking about and who the opponent might be. Nagi takes out a spyglass and wonders who would dare do something so audacious. He decides that they need to check it out and hands the device to one of his men. The man looks through the spyglass and recognizes the person in the fight. Surprised, he wonders if that really is Ransom. Nagi asks what he heard, questioning whether Ransom's body has truly recovered. In a dark room, Simolan tells him that this is the last chance and that it will not come again. She advises him to think carefully so that he will not regret it for the rest of his life. Back in the present, Nagi remains silent. His men ask whether they are just going to keep watching. An image of an archer protecting frightened children is shown. The companions then declare that they should intervene as well. He turns to his men and apologizes. Meanwhile, the blades of Ranson and Delcasu clash violently. Ranson prepares to attack his opponent once more. Delcasu again stops the blade with his bare hand. Ranson retreats and prepares to strike again. Delcasu reacts when the blade finally pierces his defense. A cut opens on his neck and he touches it with his hand. He then clenches his fist and curses the boy. The full moon illuminates the top of the ruined castle. Delcasu touches his own neck and comments on the magnificent swordsmanship of his opponent. Ranson continues to stare at him without saying a word. Then the vampire supposes that one day he might be caught. He admits that it is not as if he can continue taking blows forever as other vampires appear behind him. The vampires all advance together toward Ransom. He prepares for the imminent attack. With a single motion, he cuts down one of the approaching vampires. He curses the vampires, for he hid among the corpses only to face Shios in a one-on-one battle. Ransom realizes that there is no end to them. At this pace, he will be exhausted before he can even bring down Shios. One of the vampires attacks him with a swift strike. He dodges the blade as it grazes past his face. Ransom realizes that he needs to hurry and deal with them. Another vampire prepares a vertical attack against him. Ransom turns in surprise as he senses a sudden approach. An arrow cuts through the air at high speed and strikes the vampire squarely in the head, interrupting his attack. After the impact, the vampire's body crumbles to the ground. The other vampires react, recognizing the silver arrow imbued with aura. Ransom turns to see where the shot came from. He recognizes Liber Pete Randa with his bow in hand. A young man beside him waves and shouts that they are there as well. Ransom calls him by name Jalrin. Next, he sees C. Milan approaching. Soon after, Daisy appears as well. He is surprised to even see Seklin among them. A group of men advances with their leader shouting that everyone should die as all of his targets are now gathered. Liber Pete aims his bow once more. Similan extends her hand forward. Jalrin fires his arrows and strikes down two vampires at once. Daisy and Seklin fight together, defending themselves against enemy attacks. Ransom asks why they are all there, worried about the possibility of them getting hurt. Daisy scolds him for trying to do everything alone, stating that everyone is here now. She declares that this is something they need to face together. Jalran agrees enthusiastically. He then tells his brother to focus solely on the count. Ransom reacts to his companion's words. He understands that it is no longer the time to treat them like children. His gaze becomes focused and resolute for battle. Ransom raises his sword and declares that there is a bastard he needs to deal with. Delkashu asks whether he should start by tearing off his arm. The vampire's arm transforms, growing larger and sprouting sharp claws. Delkashu attacks with his transformed arm, but Ransom blocks the blow with his sword. He then brings his hand to his neck and a barrier manifests, repelling the vampire's attack. After the explosion, Delkashu's arm is completely disintegrated. He looks at his own shoulder and questions what just happened. Ransom raises a broken necklace and shouts that it is the necklace of protection. The necklace he found in the ruins shatters on the ground, having fulfilled its purpose. Delkashu stares at him, leaving an opening after his all-out attack. Ransom seizes the moment to use his secret trump card. He declares that the heart of the sword and his heart become one. Then he charges forward to deliver the strike. Ransom releases a powerful whirlwind-shaped attack. A man with his face partially covered reveals himself and asks how they dare do this to him. He then shouts that Ransom will be the one to die and unleashes his own attack. Ransom's whirlwind begins to overpower his opponent's strike. Kias is struck head-on by the attack. A fissure opens at the neck area, cut by the continuous assaults. Through that opening, Ransom prepares for the final blow. He lunges forward with a direct and precise thrust. The strike hits Zayas directly in the neck. Ransom remains in his stance, panting after the final movement. Ransom stands as Zaya's body collapses to the ground. The head of the vampire lord rolls across the ground defeated. Fallen, Shios asks whether that is a soul blade. The young man explains that he merely tried to mix the key of the ancient sword with an aura blade. He then wonders whether that truly is a soul blade, the symbol of a grandmaster. Suddenly, one of the remaining vampires clutches his chest and screams. Daisy and Jalrin watch as the other vampires fall one by one. Nagi's men wonder whether they are dying from shock and what is happening. Siesa's body disintegrates as Ransom realizes that he truly killed him. The archer calls out to him by the title Sir Ransom. Laburapete then confirms that he truly killed Cs. Laburapete explains that according to the records, vampires who lose their progenitor lose their senses for 1 or 2 days. Ransom asks whether they will recover in a few days, and the archer confirms that now is the perfect chance to eliminate the remnants. He then asks for permission to exterminate all those bastards before the night ends. With a smile, Ransom replies that they are the ones who should be asking him for permission. Laburapete bows and thanks him, saying that thanks to him, they avenged their comrades. Ransom watches him with a faint smile. He extends his hand and says that he will count on him, so that together they can make the city a good place to live. Then he says that he was going to tell him later, but has no choice since he arrived so suddenly. He reveals the crest of the Pietro family, explaining that 300 years ago, his family was also part of the nobility of Gloryland. Liberpete hands him the crest and asks him to accept it. The archer kneels before him and swears that from that moment on, he will serve him as his lord. From afar, Similin remarks that she knew he would go so far as to give him his crest. Ronson asks Similin whether she knows Liberpete well, and she explains that her information comes from him through her connections. He looks at her in surprise. Then he questions her about collaborating with rebel forces, but she says that she only helped a little. Similin suggests leaving the rest to Sir Liberpiet and focusing on finding evidence of the Count's crimes. She explains that the more the Count is discredited, the greater the citizens' support will be. Ranson agrees with the strategy. With Shu's death, the support of the citizens was necessary to govern the city of Kushin. So they gathered business leaders and local citizens to form an investigative team and collect evidence. Ranson and Similin arrive at a chapel, and he asks if that is the place. The two look into the interior of the Great Hall. They walk through the area, and she comments that there is nothing important there. He points to a statue, merely remarking that it is cold and unsettling. But Similin points to something and asks what that is as an item on Ranson's chest begins to react. Ranson holds the artifact and wonders why it is suddenly glowing. Then the artifact projects unstable energy in front of him. A book materializes from the energy, and he realizes that the object is glowing again just like that time. Samelin identifies it as the Book of Destiny and suggests that they try to open it. But Ranson refuses, explaining that if they open it, they could be sent to the past again, and his disappearance would cause factions to fight over the territory. She then agrees and tells him to put the object away, and he prepares to do so. Suddenly, the book flies out of his hand and opens on its own in midair. An intense light envelopes him as the book displays a message. An image of a medallion with a six-pointed star is shown. He finds himself sitting in a moving carriage under a sunny sky. He covers his face and realizes that he has, after all, been sent to the past. Then he looks around and wonders where he is. The carriage continues along its path through a vast green field. He observes the other hooded people in the carriage and notices that this time he has companions. But he notices something different about one of his companions. Ranson wonders about the pressure emanating from the man seated in front of him. The man then looks at him and asks if he has awakened, calling him by name. He realizes that this person is on a completely different level from the heretical leader he faced. His hand instinctively goes to the hilt of his sword. Ranson realizes that it is not just that man's presence. He notices that all the mana in the area is swirling around him, which makes no sense even for a Grand Master. The man then reveals himself and explains that they met by chance and that he took Ranson as his disciple. Ranson understands that this time, he is that man's disciple. Ranson asks when he took him as a disciple, and the man replies that it was a week ago. With a smile, he comments that it is miraculous and seems like divine intervention. Ranson asks for forgiveness and notices the difference in that man's demeanor compared to the other cultists. The man introduces himself as Archduke Raytena Celsius and declares that his wish is to eradicate the cultists. He then addresses Ranson Van Roa, reminding him that a week ago he became his disciple. Now they are on their way to his castle where the young man will receive his teachings. Ranson finds it strange that he is explaining the entire situation to him. Celsius says that the young man will be under his care and hopes that his aspirations will be fulfilled. A sudden realization dawns on Ranson, and Celsius asks whether he has already uncovered the truth. Ranson wonders what is happening in the world. He finds Celsius' kindness strange, considering that he sees him as an anomaly and wonders whether he knows something. Ranson then replies that for him as well, it is an honor to join the master. He asks him whether he is truly fine with the situation since he does not even know who he is. Celsius agrees that this is true and says that for that reason, the feeling he has now is fascinating. But he states that one thing is certain about the event that is unfolding when combined with his own purpose. He concludes that the event may be something he agreed to a long time ago, and Ranson reacts without understanding. Celsius admits that, to be precise, he also does not know, and that it is merely a feeling he has. Ranson questions what he means by it being just a feeling. Celsius then places his hand on Ranson's shoulder. The situation grows increasingly confusing for Ranson as the carriage continues on its way. They approach a massive gate. The carriage finally arrives at the city of glowing steel. Ranson observes that somehow he ended up there. Celsius then introduces the place as the City of Knights where he resides, glowing steel. Celsius explains that although he is the Archduke, he entrusts most of the governance to his subordinates in order to teach the next generation of scholars. Along the way, he subtly taught Ranson about the common knowledge and etiquette of that ancient era. Thanks to him, Ranson was able to gradually adapt to life there. He does not know how to return home, so he has no choice but to focus on the present. The technology and swordsmanship of that place are more advanced, so he must ensure that he gains something from it, just like last time. Celsius informs him that at the castle they are heading to, he has another disciple. He describes him as a sincere and just young man whom Ranson will soon meet. They finally arrive at the Grand Castle. Upon arrival, Ranson and a blonde-haired woman react in surprise when they see each other. Celsius stands between the two and asks whether they know each other. Iodine Serum replies that they do, and reminds her master that he is the man who helped her at the cultist's chapel about a year ago. Celsius recalls her mentioning that the man used a peculiar sword key, and she confirms that it is correct. He then says that it is fortunate that they know each other as Ranson is now her junior, and he expects her to teach him well. Celsius explains that he took Ranson as his disciple, but has been incredibly busy lately. Celsius decides that for now, she will be the one to teach him. He then takes his leave, saying that he has matters to discuss with the magistrates and that he will go on ahead. Ranson can barely believe the situation he finds himself in. The blonde-haired woman stares at him, surprised to meet him again as the Archduke's disciple. He turns to greet her, but she interrupts him and asks what he thinks he is doing. She then places her hands on her hips and asks if that is the proper way to greet one's senior. He realizes that she is already asserting herself through hierarchy. Yuden Serum informs him that regardless of his life until now, he is now one of the master's only two disciples along with her. She asks if she is wrong and he agrees that she is right. She instructs him to always keep his actions in mind so as not to disgrace the master. He finds her strict as she demands that he always maintain a neat appearance and proper conduct. She points at his boots and asks when was the last time he polished them. Next, she indicates that his cloak is crooked. And finally, she asks what is wrong with his hair. She scolds him, saying that like that, he is no different from a bandit. Then she asked what it is and why he keeps staring at her hair. Ranson points to his own hair and asked whether she could say something about his as well. Yuden Serum touches her own hair. She steps back quickly as other people watch the scene. As they walk through a courtyard, the woman introduces herself as Yuden Serum. She adds that she is also a member of the Archduke's Royal Guard, the Knights of the Horizon. Yuden admits that, to be honest, he may be stronger than she is. But she heard from the master that he still cannot properly control his sword key. She grips the hilt of her sword, stating that the only way to learn swordsmanship is by facing each other directly. Then she draws her sword and tells him to draw his as it is time for his senior to teach him the way of the sword. Ranson understands why he was suddenly called to the training field. Iodine states that she is not doing this to vent her earlier embarrassment and asks him not to misunderstand her. He agrees and draws his sword, saying that there is no need for words before a blade. Iodine Serum explains that since they cannot manipulate mana, they focus on the spirit of the sword. She states that the spirit of the sword has a single will. Then Iodine demonstrates that will by charging forward to strike. Ranson carefully observes her movement. In the clash, the blades of the two collide with force. He manages to block his instructor's strike. She then reveals that mana simply gathers in accordance with that will. He then understands that this is something completely new. Yuden comments that a constitution that directly controls mana would be advantageous, but she reminds him that mastery is the pillar and mana is the roof. Building a strong foundation is the most important thing. Yuden then asks him to try to raise the aura of his sword. Ranson concentrates and a power begins to form around his blade. Ranson finally succeeds and says that he understands. Yuden Serum observes his blade carefully. Then she turns and offers her own sword to the young man. Iodine asks him to try raising the aura with her sword as well. He prepares himself for the new challenge, but Ranson questions what is happening with the blade. He wonders why the sword is behaving that way. Iodine then states that it is just as she expected. The instructor explains that a sword's aura is the manifestation of the blade's spiritual power, and a better sword possesses stronger spiritual power, which is why he succeeded earlier. She classifies him as a low-level specialist, barely at the introductory level, leaving him surprised. Iodine reveals that this level is the stage of reading the sword, swinging it along the path it reveals. Ranson's first step is to develop the ability to release aura with any sword. She then declares that there will be a special training session that night. After the training, Ranson is lying exhausted in the middle of the courtyard. Iodine calls him by name as he turns on the ground. She then asks whether the ground is supposed to be his bed. The instructor warns him not to disgrace his master's reputation and to be careful. Yoden asks why he is wearing the same clothes as yesterday, and Ranson replies that he did not sleep. He then stands up and grips his sword with determination. An energy begins to envelop the blade of his sword. Ranson delivers a powerful slash into the air. His master watches in complete surprise at the feat. He explains that he practiced all night, which is why he managed to do something he could not before. Iodine retorts that not even the most brilliant talent could achieve that in less than a week. Despite that, she congratulates him and says they can move on to the advanced stage. Ranson asks her to proceed with the training. Then the two begin an intense combat in the courtyard. Ranson attacks with force, and Iodine blocks the strike. She holds her ground against his assault. Then, in a rapid exchange of blows, he pressures her with his attacks. Two spectators wonder how Ranson can be like that, and one of them notices that Iodine is actually being pushed back. The instructor comments that he is even using sword support. Iodine then leaps and charges at him with an aerial attack. He carefully observes her movement. Her blade stops just centimeters from Ranson's neck. He wonders how she could be so fast. After the strike, Iodine throws her sword into the air. She explains that this is the level of sword specialist where the sword moves on its own. Ranson then understands that there is a stage where the sword moves even before he thinks. Iodine informs him that in 2 weeks there will be an exchange event with a scheduled duel. And naturally, all eyes will be on Ranson van Roa, the direct disciple of Archduke Raytena. Iodine states that he absolutely must advance one more stage before then. Ranson smiles and says that it is just as expected. He then declares that this is fun. A voice approaches, scoffing at that man, Raytena. The man questions how Raytena took in an orphan and now a vagrant of unknown identity. Then Kasagi Celsius reveals himself, criticizing Raytena's choice to accept mere strangers as disciples. Kasagi Celsius says that the Grand Duke's judgment is terribly poor and that he should have inherited the position. Iodine warns him to watch his words as many eyes are watching. He then asks her if she is trying to lecture him just because Raytena declared her his successor. Kasagi continues saying that she is only an advanced specialist even after everything he did for her. And the novice, Ranson, is nothing more than a pathetic low-level specialist. He then demands to see the treasure that Raytena confiscated, but Iodine says that it cannot be shown. Kasagi again asks if she is trying to give him a sermon. Ranson watches Iodine tolerate the situation and calls her master. He offers to let Kasagi verify whether Raytena's judgment was accurate or not. The man questions him, not understanding the proposal. Ranson suggests that they have a match if he does not trust his swordsmanship. Iodine tries to stop him, but Kasagi wonders who would fight with a mere disciple. Ranson then asks if the solution is not simple and states that all he needs to do is shut everyone up with his impeccable skill. The spectators whisper among themselves about the young man's audacity. Kasagi Celsius clenches his fist and questions his nerve. Then he turns and says that he will see how long Ranson's insolence lasts. She then turns to Ranson saying that this is serious and that their master is a problem. He merely smiles and asks if she is done laughing. Iodine looks away and says that she could not hold it in earlier. Ranson states that no matter what schemes he uses, they only need to defeat everyone. She then agrees and tells them to resume training. Later that night, Ranson walks outside the courtyard. He then spots Iodine sitting on a stone bench and calls out to her. Approaching from behind, Ranson asks if she came out to train again. She replies that she was just looking at the stars. Ranson realizes that he used informal speech without noticing. Iodine invites him to look at the stars as well, and the two sit together. Iodine says that she will not scold him for the informal speech since no one is watching, and calls him her savior. In a memory, Ranson simply responds. Iodine continues saying that it is a bit late but that she was very grateful that he saved her and the children. He then suggests that if she is grateful, she should use formal speech since he saved her life and is older. Ranson asks if she likes looking at the stars, and she replies that she likes to look at the 13 main deities, which makes him curious. She explains that all stars move, but there are 13 that do not move and remain in place named after the deities. He then asks her why she likes those stars. Yoden points to a star, Maybaba, the goddess of wisdom, which rises only above their heads there. She reveals that when she was young, she did not know where she belonged. But when she saw that star, she realized where she should be. And that is why she likes to look at the 13 main deities. Then Iodine stands up to leave, saying that she needs to prepare a lecture, but Ranson reminds her that she has already finished it. He teases her, saying that she is just running away because she is embarrassed. Day breaks in the Great Hall. Iodine and Ranson walk together down a corridor. Before opening the door, Iodine asks him if he is ready. With a confident smile, Ranson simply answers yes. They then step out into a large courtyard where many other warriors are waiting for them. Ranson is surprised by the enormous number of people present. A group of men asks if he is the Grand Duke's direct disciple, and one of them says they will find out soon enough. He then realizes that everyone seems eager to tear him apart. Ranson understands that countless people wanted that position, so they would not look upon him kindly. An older man announces that in celebration of the gathering, friendly duels may begin. The combat arena is presented as the fighters take their positions. Ranson waits alone at the center of the arena. His opponent stares at him from the other side of the field. The man says that he does not know why the Grand Duke chose him as his direct disciple, but he claims that this will soon change because he will win and take that position. Ranson watches him in silence. His opponent then releases his power. Ranson smiles faintly at the challenge. Then he grips his sword and says that he can come at any time. He charges at high speed toward his opponent. The two blades collide with tremendous force. The man is shocked by Ranson's overwhelming power. Ranson then breaks his opponent's blade and prepares for the final strike. The opponent then realizes that he is about to die, and he lunges with his blade toward his opponent's neck. The man falls to the ground defeated. Iodine watches the scene completely stunned. Kasaj Celsius is left speechless by what he has just witnessed. Ranson then turns to the crowd and simply calls for the next challenger. A new opponent takes position in the arena, raising his sword toward Ranson. He then charges forward with a powerful strike. Ranson prepares for the counterattack. With a single motion, he dodges the blow and brings his opponent down. Ranson rests his sword on his shoulder and calls for the next challenger. Other knights watch the fight from a distance. Then he defeats another opponent with a precise strike and asks for the next. He knocks down the following one with a punch, and with the man already on the ground, calls for the next. The spectators comment that he is a monster for having defeated one of their uncles. Kasaj Celsius watches the scene with disdain and then turns and leaves the area. He wonders if those were all the opponents his great-uncle prepared, finding it easier than he imagined. A final opponent approaches and Ranson asks if he is the last training partner. The mysterious figure announces, "Here I come," and charges to attack. Ranson prepares for combat, concentrating power into his sword. His opponent rushes in swiftly to strike, then the mysterious figure leaps to deliver an aerial blow. But Ranson parries the strike and the opponent's sword flies from his hand. He then wonders if he might have gone too hard on the young man. Next, the hooded figure turns to leave. Before departing, the youth bows in respect. Ranson watches him leave the combat arena. The scene shifts to a banquet hall with a lavish table. Two men talk and drink wine during the celebration. Joden and Ranson, now dressed in formal attire, comment that they are glad everything ended well. Ranson remarks that if the closing banquet goes smoothly, there will be no problems, but then he points to his senior's outfit. Joden replies proudly that it is the standard attire and that he should learn from her. He then asks why she is wearing training shoes. She quickly walks away, leaving Ranson behind. The banquet takes place, marking more than a month since his arrival. He recalls the book of destiny that brought him to that time and had hoped that something would happen. His thoughts are interrupted when a voice calls him Lord Ranson. The young man he fought earlier approaches and introduces himself again as Milo Hyacinth. Ranson recognizes him as his final opponent from the arena. Milo Hyacinth suddenly bows and declares his admiration, leaving Ranson surprised. He explains that he was captivated by Ranson's confident stance and that it was an honor to fight him. Ranson scratches the back of his neck as he accepts the young man's exaggerated praise. Milo reveals that he also possesses a unique constitution. He then removes his hat and reveals himself to be a half-elf. Ranson realizes that elves truly exist. Milo explains that ordinary people communicate with sword spirits. But his dream is to be like Ranson, someone who can use both sword spirits and elementals. Ranson feels a bit guilty for not having a unique constitution. The young half-elf reminds him of his own children, so he cannot bring himself to say anything. Ranson then encourages him, saying that he will succeed if he tries hard enough. Milo shares that after a popular procedure, it became easier for him to communicate with sword energy. Ranson asks whether something like doping has become popular these days. The two continue their conversation in the middle of the hall. Suddenly, Milo points toward the window and says that it is beginning. The psychedelic moon rises in the sky through the banquet hall's window. He comments that it appears once a month and is very beautiful to see from there. Ranson, however, questions whether it can truly be considered beautiful. The triangular moon hangs in the night sky. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the banquet hall. One of the guests asks what is wrong with his companion. Ranson watches the scene, not understanding what is happening. People begin to transform into monstrous creatures. He then wonders whether this is the prophecy of the Book of Destiny. Milo suddenly bends over in pain and calls out to Lord Ranson. The young half-elf says that his body feels strange as he transforms. Ranson calls him by name, watching the change. Milo then wonders if he will be alright as the transformation progresses. Ranson kneels before the creature and asks Milo to awaken. The beast recognizes him and murmurs Ranson's name. He then confesses that his wish was to become a knight. Ranson watches him with an expression of anguish, but a monster charges in to attack and Milo throws himself at the creature to stop it. Then Ranson turns at the last second as he senses the assault. The creature attacks, but its blow is blocked and it is hurled away. Then the creature lunges at Ranson. He then asks why this is happening, but the beast charges again, evading the strike. Ranson once again wonders why this is happening. His attacks continue to miss their mark and he wonders why. A voice calls out to him, pulling him out of his trance. At his side, iodine serum blocks the attack of another creature. She shakes him and warns that they need to leave now or they will both die, pointing toward the exit. But Ranson hesitates, worried about Milo. In the hall, Milo is overwhelmed and bitten by two other lycanthropes. He realizes it is too late as Ioan pulls him by the arm. With a defeated look, he agrees to leave. As they run, Ranson explains that all the enemies are too strong and that their reactions are too fast. Ioan then looks at him and says that if she can do it, so can he. One of the creatures watches them as they attempt to escape. Then one of the lycanthropes howls, and the others respond in chorus. Suddenly, the pair finds themselves completely surrounded by the monsters. Ranson takes on a determined stance. With a single sword strike, he severs the head of one of the creatures. The monster roars as it is struck. Iodine also springs into action, cutting down another enemy that approaches. Ranson turns and faces three more lycanthropes ahead of him. With a spinning motion, he attacks the creatures around him. The duo fights in perfect sync, carving a path through the chaos. They seize the opening and start running down the corridor again. Iodine warns that they are almost at the exit. She says they will leave through there to regroup with the other knights. But as they stop in front of the door, she says that the monsters are after the master of the treasury, and that they need to stop them. They turn and realize that the lycanthropes are blocking the door. Iodine raises her sword stating that this is the last one, and that she will attack again. But Ranson stops her and asks her to wait a moment. He says that something feels wrong and from the back of one of the monsters, something begins to emerge. Tentacles burst violently from the creature's back. The two watch as the other lycanthropes also reveal their tentacles. Then Iodine takes position and blocks the rain of attacks with her sword. Ranson watches her and reflects on the realm of sword mastery where reaction speed approaches 0. He calls for them to advance together and she agrees. On the ground, the severed tentacle pieces begin to move and regenerate. Ranson turns as he notices movement behind him. One of the regenerated tentacles lunges rapidly toward him. With a swift motion, he manages to block the attack. He then joins Iodine and warns her that those things are regenerating. The two face the tentacles and Ranson concludes that merely cutting them will not be enough. Iodine shoves Ranson aside, placing herself in front of the attack, and she is grabbed, the tentacle piercing straight through her abdomen. Ranson is left in shock at what has just happened. With a shout, Ranson unleashes his power. He swings his sword in a swift arc, cutting down all the tentacles around him. The appendages dissolve, but the remaining liquid on the ground begins to merge again. The main lycanthrope attacks him with its own tentacles. Ranson dodges with a quick movement and strikes the lycanthrope, cutting it in half. He takes a deep breath, regaining his composure. Alone in the hall, he turns and walks toward the exit. Outside, he sees the chaotic battle unfolding across the city. His face is stained with blood as he watches the scene. He then notices a strange light in the sky. He wonders if that light is the cause of all the chaos. Suddenly, Ranson staggers backward. He falls to the ground, lamenting that even though he thought he had grown stronger, he failed to protect anyone. A notification informs him of his failure to alter history. He awakens in an unknown place, questioning the female voice he hears. The voice explains that it is using broken causality to rewind time. She warns him that this power is not infinite and that failure will result in complete defeat. A book appears before him, and the voice wishes him good luck. The text in the book changes, mentioning that his master has returned a treasure. Ranson is surprised as he reads the message. A medallion with a 6-pointed star is shown. The scene shifts to Ranson traveling in a carriage under a blue sky. He startles when someone calls out to him. A man pulls back his hood and asks if he is all right. The man is Burson, who mentions having found him by chance and taken him as his disciple. Ransom then realizes that he has returned to the beginning of everything. Ransom turns to his master and greets him. He then asks what war trophy he brought back in the chest. Burson reveals that it is a sacred relic of the cult. Upon hearing that, Ransom realizes the terrible connection to future events. He tries to warn his master that something terrible happened because of the relic, but Burson interrupts him with a simple enough. He states that he does not know what happened, but that it seems to be something Ranson himself must resolve. Ranson asked him what he means by that. His master simply replies that he does not know, but that he is sorry and thanks him. With that, Ranson understands that he will have to resolve everything on his own. Then he decides to make a different request of Burson. He asks his master to teach him the art of the sword. Burson smiles and agrees that starting that way is not a bad idea. The two take their positions for training, swords in hand. Burson raises his weapon and declares that from that moment on, he will show him the objective he must pursue. Energy gathers around the blade of Burson's sword. He then challenges him to attack with all his strength. Ranson accepts and with his own sword energized, announces his attack. He charges forward swiftly. Then he unleashes a strike that creates a massive whirlwind. The technique surges toward his master, but Burson stands firm watching the attack approach. He smiles with confidence. Gripping the sword with both hands, he prepares himself. With a single motion, his blade cuts through Ranson's attack. Surprised, Ranson drops to his knees and asks what that was. Burson reveals that it is the realm of the complete blade, the aura of steel. He explains that one must refine the soul until it becomes one with the sword. Ranson stares at his master, understanding that he must reach that realm. Elsewhere, Iodine Serum is informed that for a time, she will have to teach. Ranson steadies himself with a resolute gaze, determined to protect them. In the castle courtyard, he practices a wide swing with his sword. He continues the motion with a precise spin, but his training is interrupted, making him look up. The castle tower bell begins to ring. In the sky, someone announces that the psychedelic moon has appeared. Milo Hyacinth smiles enthusiastically at the person beside him. In a hall, Ranson watches the scene with a tense expression as everything has begun. Under its influence, two of the knights transform into lycanthropes and roar. Ranson observes the scene in silence. He recalls that for 2 weeks, he traveled through time, discovering that the monsters were students who had received a treatment mentioned by Milo. Even after investigating the related drugs, he found nothing unusual. He remembers Milo calling out, saying that his body felt strange as he transformed. Ranson recalls that moment with a tense expression. Then he finds himself once again before Milo, who is struggling against the transformation on the ground. He kneels and asks his friend to hold on just a little longer, but another creature charges at him. With a swift motion, he cuts the beast down with his blade. After the strike, he finds himself surrounded by other lycanthropes. Even so, with his sword in hand, he stands firm and determined to try. One of the lycanthropes leaps toward him to attack with its claws. He decides that this time will be different and advances with his sword, declaring that he can drive the monsters away. With a sideways slash, he strikes one of the lycanthropes. His movement opens a path through the enemies. He sees Milo being attacked by another lycanthrope and shouts his name, then runs toward them to help. Suddenly, one of the creatures appears behind him. He turns and cuts down the lycanthrope. A scream distracts him, making him look to the side. Another monster charges toward Milo, who lies on the ground. The creature calls out his name as it is subdued. Ranson freezes as he remembers Milo's wish to become a knight. He fails to protect him once again. Then Aiden shouts his name. Yoden positions herself in front of Ranson and blocks the attack of one of the monsters. She shakes him and warns that they need to leave now or they will both die, pointing toward the exit. Yoden then says that they are all ridiculously strong and suggests splitting the tasks. She proposes cutting the necks while she handles the claws. But Ranson interrupts her with a shout, telling her to be quiet. Ranson drops to his knees on the ground and she shouts his name again. He then charges alone down the corridor toward the lycanthropes. With a leap, he throws himself at the creatures to attack them. Ranson kneels on the ground, defending himself against multiple attacks. The scene shifts to a starry night sky. On a rooftop, Ranson asks Eoden whether Lord 13 is watching, leaving her confused. She turns to him and asks how he knew about that. He explains that he knows because she already told him and that seeing Lord 13 helps him know where they are. Ranson asks if she is thinking of protecting that place while looking at the sky. Eoden confirms that it was there that she received everything she has, but asks him why he protected her. He then recalls the words about staying alive and protecting. She mentions the realm of sword support where the weapon moves on its own, and Ranson asks whether it moves against the owner's will. With a smile, Eoden asks if his concern is that she might not be able to control her own sword, but she explains that upon reaching that realm, such distinctions lose their meaning. Ranson reflects that the sword is him and he is the sword, and that its movement is merely his heart. Back in the battle, he unleashes a circular strike against the enemies. From the defeated creatures, a new mass of tentacles forms. The tentacles surge forward to attack Ranson. He advances through the blows, carving a path with his sword. He prepares for a final attack. With a single motion, he cuts the creature in half. Yoden runs to him and asks if he is crazy and trying to kill himself as he realizes that he saved her. He then says that if she has the breath to talk, she should use it to swing her sword. Then one of the lycanthropes charges to attack. Ranson intercepts it with a strike of his sword. He realizes that he saved Eoden and killed the monster. Amid the fallen enemies, he wonders if he finally succeeded. Eoden then warns that the lycanthropes are heading outside. She pulls him and says that they need to leave as well. Outside, Ranson notices a familiar light in the sky. He asks in disbelief whether this is happening again. A notification informs him that the alteration of history has failed. Time rewinds once more, consuming the broken causality. In the book, the dates change, showing a new starting point. He finds himself once again in the carriage under daylight. With a determined gaze, he understands that he cannot merely win. Ransom continues his journey in the carriage, reflecting on his path. He understands that his mission is to protect the cult's treasure, but he will not be able to overcome this challenge without reaching sword support. So he turns and calls for his master and asks him how exactly he can reach sword support. Ransom calls for his master. Then he asks how exactly he can reach sword support. He states that the young man is almost there, only half a step away. Ransom replies that he feels the same. In a battle memory, he charges forward with his sword against a lycanthrope. He strains to move faster, but an enemy attacks him from behind. The need to kill faster becomes evident, and he lunges forward in a swift strike. Back in the present, Ransom says that no matter how he calls, the sword does not move. Sitting beside him, Burson states that calling does not work, and the young man asks him to explain. The master asks whether he orders his heart to beat or his stomach to digest. Ransom replies that he does not. Then the master explains that a sword is not commanded but accepted. He processes his master's words. Sword support means that the blade becomes part of the user not by command, but by unity. And this support is not a separate stage, but simply the process of becoming one with the weapon. Then two men lift him up as Burson instructs him not to draw his sword, and Ranson asks what he should do. His master advises him not to pull the sword, but to wait for it to pull him. Ranson begins to protest, but he knows there is no time. Elsewhere outside a great castle, Iodine Serum spots him and reacts. Ranson approaches her in silence. She comments that he is still the same as ever. Then he smiles and states that seeing her somehow calms him. The others, including the master, observe the interaction between the two. The master comments that he realized it faster than expected, and Ranson raises his sword into the air. Two guards react, questioning his audacity in front of the Grand Duke, but a hand is raised to silence them. Bersund declares that the young man has finally touched it. He has reached the realm where the blade and the self are one. Then his master asks what Ranson's true desire is. He states that his desire is to protect Iodine and the city. His gaze hardens with conviction. Iodine watches him in silence. Later, inside a banquet hall, Ranson, Iodine, and Milohyason are together in formal attire. She thanks Ranson, saying that thanks to him, was able to wear proper shoes to the graduation banquet. And she confesses that she almost ran away midway to change them. He replies that that would have been strange for him. Milo says that to protect the two of them, it is better to stay nearby. Yodin asks what he means, but Ranson replies that some things are just like that. The half-elf comments on Iodine's unexpectedly sloppy side, and she insists that it was only that one time. Ranson remains silent, his gaze focused. A prophecy says that if the words in the Book of Destiny are erased and the Master returns to the past, only one chance will remain. Suddenly, a bell tolls and a rift opens in the sky. Ranson turns and states that this time they must succeed. Then lycanthropes invade the hall, attacking those present. Yodin asks what is happening as Milo drops to his knees. Ranson grips her by the shoulders, asking her to listen carefully. He instructs her to lead the knights and evacuate the healthy recruits, but she protests, saying that they need to kill the monsters before any evacuation. He states that he will handle the monsters and that she must gather the troops after the retreat. Ranson then orders her to find a strange light to the south of the city, attack it, and eliminate its source. Iodine asks if he knows something. He confirms it and tells her to go, ordering her to take down anyone who tries to stop her without hesitation. Meanwhile, the lycanthropes continue to gather in the hall. Yodin finally agrees to his orders. Then she runs out of the hall to carry out her mission. Ranson remains in the middle of the chaos, holding one of the lycanthropes. Beside him, Milo begins to transform into a lycanthrope, saying that his body feels strange. Ranson asks him to hold on just a little longer. He turns to face the enemies approaching and positions himself to protect Milo, surrounded by other lycanthropes. A horde of perhaps 300 lycanthropes reveals itself before him. A creature attacks with a powerful blow, but Ranson steps in between its claws. He decides that the number of enemies does not matter as long as his sword responds in his hand. Then he unleashes a series of high-speed strikes. The attacks hit several lycanthropes at the same time. Ransom advances, cutting down another opponent in his path, and he promises himself that this time he will not let a single enemy escape. He launches himself in a sweeping arc of motion, his blade cutting through the air. A lycanthrope lunges at him, but his reaction is instantaneous. His body moves even before he realizes it. He understands that it is not he who is wielding the sword. The sword is guiding him, leading him to strike another monster. The amount of information the blade transmits to him is overwhelming. It is incomparable to before as he finishes off yet another creature. Dozens of movements that have not yet happened unfold before his eyes, and he realizes that this is the realm of sword perception. The remaining lycanthropes charge at him from all sides. He prepares for the attack and unleashes another torrent of strikes that fills the entire hall. The creatures' bodies fall around him. This time he managed to kill all the lycanthropes before they could escape. Looking at the carnage, he declares that it is done. Milo curls up on the ground, now fully transformed. Ransom kneels beside him, asking him to hold on as there must be a way to reverse it. But Milo replies that it is not that simple. Ransom encourages him not to say such weak things, stating that the skilled mages there will surely find a way. Milo apologizes to him and says that he knows the truth. He states that his condition cannot be undone and that his only wish is to die as a human. And Mello takes his own life before Ranson. Several tentacles emerge from the creature and surge toward Ranson. He grits his teeth as he defends himself and drives his sword into the creature, being struck by the tentacles in the process. The monster bursts into flames and Ranson says that he has already suffered enough. As he watches the body burn, he promises that if Milo is reborn in 10,000 years, he will treat him well as family. He sheathes his sword and runs out of the hall, passing by the bodies of the lycanthropes. He looks over the city and realizes that there is no light, concluding that Iodine succeeded. Iodine runs toward him, calling out his name. She keeps running while shouting that Ranson was hit and that the master broke the chains of the heretics. In her recollection, she reveals that when the master was defeated, the strange light disappeared. With that, the lycanthropes lost their strength and one collapses in front of her. Ranson smiles, a light glowing in his chest, and says that she did well. Iodine suddenly stops as she sees him dissolve into particles and calls out to him. The full moon shines in the night sky. Elsewhere, a younger Ranson walks through a destroyed city. He clutches his chest and laments that he could not tell her that she did well. Ranson looks around and wonders if this is the center of the city of Kushan, calculating that a week has passed since his disappearance. He surveys the city and comments that it is a mess as expected. Since his siblings were not at the Ilnian estate, he leaps from one rooftop to another. He lands and concludes that this is the only place they could be. Then the young man approaches the castle of the Pietro Baroni. Since Ribera knew Sia, he deduces that she must have taken his siblings there to seek refuge. He believes that they must be safe with Ribera, but wants to see for himself. A woman appears behind him with a blade at his back, ordering him not to move and asking who sent him. He realizes that even the slightest movement will get him cut and recognizes that she is a high-level specialist. His hand grips the hilt of his own sword. In a swift motion, he spins around and blocks her attack. Ranson recognizes her as Katrina, and she stammers his name. She asks excitedly if it is really him, and the young man confirms that it has been a long time since they last met. Katrina, incredulous, asks to take a closer look at him, and he comments that the situation is chaotic. She asks when he returned, and Ranson explains that Sia sent a message 2 days ago about an attack. Then Katrina turns and shouts for everyone to come out. Seclin Ilnian announces that his brother is back. Daisy Ilnian and Similon hear the news, and the young woman repeats that Ranson has returned. Daisy reacts with surprise at the revelation. From the courtyard, Ranson waves to them beside Katrina. He looks at the gathered group and says that now it finally feels real. Then he embraces Seclin and Daisy, saying that he has finally come home. Once gathered in a room, Ranson says that the joy of reunion is brief and that he will get straight to the point. Saint Milan explains that in the week since Sho's death, Ashley has devoured half of the city of Kushan. Ranson asks if she is referring to Ashley, the former bandit leader, and wonders how that could have happened. She continues saying that they themselves were about to be devoured by Ashley before his arrival. Similon adds that he applied blatant pressure and Ranson asks what kind of pressure that was. She crosses her arms in silence. Daisy then reveals that he wants to marry her. Ranson wonders if he heard that right and asks what Ashley wants. Similon begins to explain that about 3 days after his disappearance, Ashley was the first to act. He brought in territorial forces, formed alliances with unscrupulous families, and even drew neutral factions to his side. In addition, he recruited the Red Warriors, and within 7 days took control of half of the city's armed groups. And now, he has even hired the cultic brotherhood. Ransom simply replies that he understands. He reflects that a great deal happened while he was away, and that any longer delay would have been a disaster. Daisy asked her brother to calm down first, but he ignores her. He then states that he is more controlled and rational than ever. Then he asks where he can go to have a deep conversation with that bastard. C. Milan informs him that the next day, there will be a meeting of the Kushan Council, and Ashley will be present. Ranson declares that this is the perfect chance to deal with Ashley and all the rest of the trash, but she stops him saying that he cannot do that because maintaining public order is essential. She reinforces that he knows a certain scale of armed group is a practical necessity. Then she pushes a book across the table toward him and reveals that it is a list of targets. Ranson opens the book and analyzes its contents. The list shows names in blue for decent factions, black for irredeemable trash, and red for intermediaries. He notices that even those marked in red live off illegal activities, but C. Milan insists that they need them to keep the city running. Looking at the list, he asks whether Ashley is also marked in red. He then asks if everyone listed will be gathered tomorrow, and Saya Milan confirms that they will. Ranson stands up, closes the book, and declares that he will handle the rest. The next day, in a ruined part of the city, several armed groups are gathered waiting. One of the men points toward an arrival and tells the others to look. Ranson approaches accompanied by Katrina and Baron Duroa, and a man comments that he was alive after all. Katrina Egan of the Ilnian family is at his side, and Baron Duroa, also of the Ilnian family, accompanies him. Ashley turns and greets Lord Ranson. The bandit approaches, expressing relief that he came and that he is safe. Ashley asks why Miss Daisy did not come, and Ranson questions why he is asking about her. He replies with a smile that he likes girls with strong pride. Ranson stares at him with a cutting gaze. Ashley then asks if he heard about his proposal and asks him to look upon it favorably. He continues saying that becoming family would not be bad for the new count. Ranson questions the title of new count, and Ashley confirms that he is the new count and states that no one there would deny it. Ashley then declares that even the count will not be able to ignore his faction since half the city is in his hands. He addresses the crowd asking if they heard that some guys caused trouble during his absence. Then he raises the book containing the list of targets. Ranson points to the Carew family and accuses them of massacring an entire family to steal their property. He simply calls for Katrina. A member of the Carew family tries to explain himself while drawing his sword, but Katrina advances and executes the man with a single strike of her sword. The other faction members react, declaring that Ranson has gone mad. Ashley comments that the new count is frightening and that he is enforcing the law from the very beginning. Ranson then calls for the Raran family, and Baron Dora executes one of its members. The Heron, Dasbaker, and Lucas families are the next to be called and eliminated. Ashley watches the bodies lying on the ground after the mass execution. He turns to Ranson and says that he thinks they understood the message. Ranson states that being too frightening can be counterproductive before calling the next names. He then lists the names Taplin, Dusk, Kukurak, X, and Shadowker, leaving Ashley surprised. Ashley turns to his men and shouts that this is why he warned them to know when to stop. Ransom, Baron, and Katrina walk toward him. Ashley stares at him and tries to justify himself to Ransom, saying that he always respected the limits and that the problem lies with the others. One of his allies confronts him, questioning why he is trying to distance himself now that they were profiting together. Ashley's ally accuses him of keeping the dirtiest share of the profits. Ashley and his men step back, questioning the title of new count. Ranson prepares to act, and Ashley reacts as he senses the imminent danger. Then Ranson charges forward and strikes Ashley with a swift blow. Ashley staggers backward, questioning what he thinks he is doing. Ranson then lists the bandits' crimes, including 3 drug production facilities and 12 forced prostitution networks. And all of that was managed by Ashley. The sentence of execution is then declared. Ranson faces Ashley and his men amid the ruins, then Ashley summons the Red Warrior Squad. Warriors in armor march toward him. Ranson warns him that it is still not too late to stop this bravado. But Ashley warns that if they continue like this, both sides will be annihilated. Ranson swings his blade at Ashley's neck, beheading him. The other men watch the scene in shock. The great warrior, Uxala, approaches and asks whether he truly intends to finish this. Ranson simply tells Uncle Uxala to choose an option. The warrior is then asked whether he will retreat or attack. Ranson asks if he truly believes he can kill everyone in that land of thieves and how clean he is to say such a thing. Ranson states that whether one is clean or not is not what matters. He continues, saying that because of people like the warrior, families are destroyed. In a memory, a boy begs his mother not to leave. Illegitimate children are born, and the city gains more orphans because of it. Ranson then wonders what difference telling him all of that will make. With his sword raised, he warns that if Uxala does not understand, he will die. The warrior watches him, then Ranson charges toward the men behind him. Uxala and the others are struck by the blow. Wounded, the warrior looks back. Amid the fallen men, he shouts for everyone to attack, for Ranson intends to kill them all. One of the men agrees, stating that if they do not work together, they will all die. Ranson confirms that he will kill them all and challenges them to attack him at once. He then blocks the multiple attacks of his opponents. Ranson grips his sword, preparing for the battle. He concentrates for the next move. Surrounded, he defends against multiple attacks while striking at the same time, killing them all. Asura calls him a bastard and charges toward Ranson, trying to strike him with his sword, but Ranson severs his head in an instant. The spectators call him insane, saying that such a thing cannot be possible. One of the men wonders if he is a grandmaster. Ranson then asks if they are the men Ashley hired. The group reveals itself as the Calciric Brotherhood. He looks at his new opponents over his shoulder. One of the men kneels and begs to be spared. Ranson admits that he is a bit weak for that kind of situation. He then orders everyone to kneel and raise their hands. One of the men asks if there are about 70 people left in total. With his sword in hand, Ranson decides that it is time to end this. He charges forward and cuts down several opponents at once. One of the survivors declares that they cannot defeat him. Then the man shouts for everyone to run. The men flee in panic through the ruins. Arrows are fired toward them. The fugitives are struck in the back. Atop a wall, 3 archers watch the scene. Jalran orders that not a single enemy be allowed to escape alive. The arrows continue to strike the fleeing men. The last survivors look toward the new threat. Katrina and Baron approach, and she announces that they have arrived as well. Katrina advances and attacks the men with her sword. Baron also joins the fight and brings down an enemy. From above, Jalran takes aim with his bow. His arrows hit their targets cleanly. Ranson runs toward one of the last men and attacks him with his sword. The sun begins to set on the horizon, and Ranson stands amid mutilated bodies. Simolan approaches through the devastation. He says that he killed them all, and she agrees. Ranson reports that everyone on the red list or higher has been eliminated. Milan asks him why he did it. He simply replies that it was because of Lena. Ranson explains that those men were the reason Lena became an orphan, and he hates seeing the number of orphans continue to grow. He wants the city they govern to be a place where children can live and smile, but states that they were a necessary evil. Milan argues that if they do not have the strength to hunt monsters, the city will die. She laments that she cannot think of a way to gather enough power to protect the city. Ranson smiles and asks whether he acted without thinking. Then he suggests excavating ruins. Simolan questions the idea of excavation. He confirms it, mentioning a place he visited recently. Ranson speaks about Mibavar, the goddess of wisdom, one of the 13 forgotten ancient deities. It was the place looked toward every day, the city of knights. There lies the shining steel. He explains that if news of the excavation spreads, all the warriors of the land of thieves will head there. A group of people rides in a line through a forest. One of the riders asks if this is really safe, even though they were instructed to follow the merchants. A knight finds the sudden excavation of ruins strange, since there were no rumors, especially with the city in turmoil because of the purge. Another man questions the subjugation of monsters and regrets having come to that place. Ranson reflects that for merchants, fewer warriors mean less trade, which would certainly leave them dissatisfied. He then wonders what their expressions will be like later. Ranson turns to Calciric and asks if he has thought about the matter. Calciric states that to repay his debt, he and his brothers will dedicate their lives to serving him for the next year. But he adds that staying permanently requires more consideration, as they need to discuss it with their brothers and resolve matters in their hometown. Ranson concludes that, in the end, they lack the conviction to place their trust in him. With a smile, Ranson says that it is a shame because that is the only chance to claim a ruined castle. Calciric realizes that Ranson's gaze is not merely a bluff. The group rides toward the ruins. Upon arriving, the men question the place, seeing only a pile of rocks. Ranson explains that to others it may be just rocks and pillars, but to him the place is familiar. He observes the beautiful transformed site, a place that somehow vanished. One of the men comments that he cannot see any ruins. Ranson instructs him to look carefully because everything they see is ruins. With a movement of his sword, he cuts away the vines blocking the path. The men look ahead and ask if those are walls. The group comes upon an immense structure covered in moss. Calciric approaches to inspect the construction. He runs his hand along the wall and comments on the architectural technique with no visible seams. Then the man wonders if it is from the era of magic. Ranson smiles and asks what everyone is waiting for. He orders them to tear away the moss. One of the men responds affirmatively while staring at a statue covered in vegetation. Another man announces that he found something there as well. A third discovers that it too is a wall. He then warns that there is a door there. Among the vines, the men discover pieces of metal. One of them identifies the material as lustrous steel. He then lifts an ancient sword he found. Another man announces that he also found a sword. A third finds a suit of armor. Before long, one of them is already holding 3 ancient swords. Calcric realizes that the rocks and pillars are in fact buildings. He asks Ranson if they have just discovered an entire ancient city. Ranson simply welcomes them. He welcomes them to the ancient city of steel. One man comments that they will need many warriors and explorers to excavate ruins of such scale. They run toward Ranson asking for a moment of his attention. He reassures them saying that they will discuss the detailed information tomorrow when they return to the city. Calciric then calls Count Ranson to speak about the matter. Ranson turns to Calciric questioning him. Calciric then asks if he may change his words. He speaks about staying there permanently and Ranson comments on how strange it is for him to say it that way. Days later, rumors spread across the land of thieves about a city-sized ruin in Kushan where warriors are being recruited. Upon hearing about ancient weapons and armor, 2 men agree that they need to hurry before others claim them. In search of treasure and opportunity, everyone gathers and heads for the city of Kushan. A new day begins in the city. Ranson tells the group that the last 3 days were a chance to make things clear to everyone in the city. He continues, stating that now they know who truly rules the place. Baron and C. Milan know that the real fight begins now as they will have to defend the city from beasts, bandits, and even from the Count himself. They stand on the threshold of a dream, able to shape the city, rebuild their home, and even found a new kingdom, and perhaps even take revenge on the empire and reclaim the kingdom of Vanroa. Katrina and Daisy Ilnahan listen attentively. Jalrin adds that this also applies to the younger siblings, even those not born in Vanroa. Cyclin Il Neon states that each of them will found their own houses. Ranson encourages them to grow stronger and dream higher, to restore what was lost and build what never existed. He then announces that he called them early because from now on, they will train every day at that hour. Ranson will teach them a form of swordsmanship he mastered recently, pure fencing returned to the basics without aura. Katrina asks why he is not teaching them aura techniques. He explains that they will learn about the sword itself and that mastering this will make them stronger than a swordmaster. She then asks if that is why he suddenly became so strong and Ranson simply confirms it. Katrina jumps excitedly and asks him to teach them. Ranson smiles at them. He then asks them to draw their swords as he will explain the rules. The first rule is that during training, he is their master and will not hold back. The second is that for 24, they must never let go of their swords, not even to sleep. He raises 3 fingers to announce the third rule. They must block however they can and counterattack however necessary. Ranson apologizes to Katrina, but states that the older ones always take the first beating and then strikes her in the face. He says that he would not hit her hard enough to injure her. Ranson explains that they only grow stronger after getting beaten. He then tells them to focus as if it were real combat because the connection with the blade deepens only when it is wielded until the mind goes blank. Ranson strikes Daisy with his training sword. He reminds her that she once called that older brother, Sir. Then he attacks Semmelin for conspiring with rebel forces behind his back. Seklin is also struck for always acting like an adult. Jalrin is next, and he hears that now he is the one getting beaten. Ranson pauses for a moment. He then says that it feels incredible, perhaps because he has gone a long time without training. Jalrin and Semmelin call him crazy for laughing while attacking them. But Katrina decides that they will not just stand there and take the beating. She then shouts for them to attack from all sides at once. The group rushes at Ranson, and he blocks the multiple attacks with his sword. Ranson stands amid his fallen companions and asks if that is all they have. Katrina is lying on the ground. Semmelin and Seklin are also down with her saying she cannot get up and that he should just kill her. Ranson looks at the last warrior still standing. With his sword planted in the ground, Sarua supports himself as he rises. He steadies himself to face his opponent. Ranson recalls the moment of the coordinated attack when the two clashed. The entire group attacked him at once. He realized that Sorua's blade alignment and speed were good, but his anxiety made him hesitate before contact. He decides to observe him a little more instead of pressuring him too much for now. At the end of the day, the training comes to an end. Ransom then announces that it is time for a meeting. Lying on the ground, Similan asks him to just kill her. Meanwhile, rumors of the ruins spread and reach the ears of the giant of the northwest. The man questions his servant about the city of Kushan. The servant informs him that Xiaz is dead and that an ancient city has been discovered. With a smile, the man declares that the heavens are on their side and orders the preparation of an army made up of the fastest and most experienced. He then states that what matters most is speed. Harun, the Gale King and one of the 5 kings of the land of thieves, declares that it has been a long time since his heart raced like this. The scene changes, revealing an imposing mansion under a sky with several moons. Then, the view opens up to a valley between mountains at dawn. Looking out the window, he remarks that he got a house for free during the purge. Just then, a woman arrives and asks if he needs his sword for the meeting. He says yes, telling her to bear with it because she'll be grateful later. Then he asks what she wanted to discuss that prompted the meeting. She reveals the topic is time travel using the Book of Destiny. Surprised, he says it's impossible for any traces from 10,000 years ago to still exist. She simply tells him to look at the document she's placing on the table. Reading the paper carefully, he's intrigued by the report's contents. She explains that it's a report from the excavation of an ancient elixir. According to the document, only half of the vial's contents remained at the time. He then realizes his actions in the past have truly affected the present. Without pausing, she asks him to take a look at another document. She explains that the paper is a copy of an entire monument. On it, an image shows him and a woman facing a wolf creature. Focusing on the drawing, a close-up shows the detail of the sword's hilt. Pointing, he says that his biggest concern at that moment was that very sword. Analyzing the paper, he comments that the design of the sword's guard is unusual. Then he realizes the image depicts him fighting alongside Iodin. She confirms it's him, proving the place he traveled to was the past. Because of this, she warns that his actions can alter the present, asking for more caution. Just then, a message appears explaining how to consume broken causality to go back in time. Seen from behind, he concludes that the Book of Destiny itself wants to alter history. He says the item forces him to change everything even if he tries to be careful. She then questions what the book's objective might be, wondering if it's to save civilization. With no answers, she decides they need to activate the book one more time to investigate. He suggests visiting a place related to the heretics since the book reacts to them. Then he asks about Count Delkshu, the most likely candidate according to her. She states that Kushan obtained the knowledge and wonders if there's a chapel. Confirming the suspicion, she says the existence of a chapel is highly probable. He then comments that this works out since they needed to deal with the remnants anyway. He then decides they will subjugate Kushan as soon as the area is stable. On the table, she unrolls a map revealing the kingdom's reconstruction plan. Pointing at the map, she says the empire is too strong for them. According to the plan, they will ally with the west to close the trade routes. In the south, the idea is to form an alliance with Arandria for the sea routes. And in the east, the goal is to block the path to control local trade. But she warns that there's an initial condition for the plan to work. Without it, she stresses that the entire strategy cannot even begin. Then the kings who rule the lands are shown, Harun and Jafar. He realizes he needs to defeat 2 absolute rulers just to get started. Calling it a 3-front strategy, she says she wanted to discuss the risks beforehand. Finishing her explanation, she asks if he thinks all of this is possible. He then lowers his head for a moment, reflecting on the complex proposal. Leaning on the map, he states that not being able to do it isn't an option. Then extending a hand with a smile, he invites her to do this together. Shaking her hand, they seal the deal, and she simply agrees to the plan. Meanwhile, outside, shouting announces that the event is finally over. Just then, the office doors open, revealing who was on the other side. Entering the room, a man informs Ransom that the 3rd test has ended. The scene shifts to the courtyard, where he congratulates everyone on a job well done. Facing the crowd, he begins to explain about the 20,000 registered candidates. Out of that total, only 3,426 passed the final test. Announcing their success, he promises to pay everyone a monthly salary of 12 talents. Thus, an elite army capable of facing the empire was finally formed. Observing the result, she sees the beginning of the 3-front strategy she created. With his new army, he prepares to write a new page in history. With a smile, he asks everyone to follow him on this path. Pointing to the table, he tells everyone to start filling out their contracts. In front of a large crowd, the new recruits begin to sign their contracts. With everything finalized, she slams the pile of signed documents onto the table. Turning to her, he observes the courtyard with the ruined buildings in the background. Greeting one of the recruits, he says that now all the contracts are signed. Putting an accessory on his head, he warns the men that there's no escape. Then he welcomes everyone to the training camp from hell. With his arms crossed, he tells everyone to prepare for what's coming. Returning to the conversation, he says they need to end this subjugation quickly. She then asks him to do it in 3 weeks if possible. With a smile, he asks who she thinks he is. Confidently, he claims he'll get it all done in just 1 week. He promises to return within that time, furious with whoever dares to target his territory. Back in the present, a soldier says it's impossible, but he's cut off with a sharp no. With a smile on his face, he assures them he already has a plan for everything. Seeing that expression, the soldier starts to get a very bad feeling about the plan. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake with the sound of something approaching. Standing in the middle of the field, he awaits the arrival of the approaching threat. The soldiers immediately raise their shields, forming a defensive wall. A shout warns that a herd of 300 furious bulls is charging at them. Giving the first order, he shouts for the first regiment to prepare for action. Then, the second regiment is ordered to form a square with the leaders at the front. Right after, the third regiment is commanded to ready their arrows. Finally, the fourth regiment is ordered to prepare their spears for the attack. A soldier yells that the herd is 700 meters away. The distance closes quickly, now down to 300 meters. Getting ever closer, the bulls are now 150 meters from the formation. With the targets in sight, the archer commander orders everyone to prepare to fire. Then a shower of arrows is fired, falling upon the first row of bulls. Several arrows strike one of the beasts square in the head, piercing the target. Seeing the result, he yells for the spearman to throw. Throwing his spear, one of the warriors attacks with all his might. Flying through the air, the spears hit the bulls dead on, piercing through their bodies. More spears follow the attack, piercing and bringing down more bulls. Wounded, one of the giant bulls roars in pain before collapsing to the ground, but the rest of the herd continues to charge forward without slowing down. On the front line, a soldier with an axe braces for direct impact. The shield men are ordered to hold the line firm to withstand the impact. Shouting the new order, he commands the regiments to surround and annihilate the enemy. Leaping over the herd, a soldier strikes one of the bulls with his spear. The blow sends the spear through the creature's chest, and it roars from the impact. In the midst of the battle, he continues to shout orders, guiding his men's attack. After the confrontation, the sky darkens as the dust from the fight begins to settle. Standing in the silence, the soldier surveys the aftermath of the battle. The scene pans across the battlefield, revealing an overwhelming first victory. He comments that common sense dictates that the strongest warriors go first, but the commander had formed the front line using only regular soldiers. Even so, all 300 bulls were defeated without a single casualty in the army. The soldier realizes that Count Ribera is a man who defies common sense. Turning around, he calls out to the Count to start an important conversation. He then apologizes for having doubted his commander's strategy in the battle. With conviction, he states that he now believes it is possible to defeat them in a week. Hearing the apology, the commander just observes him intently in silence. Satisfied with the response, he announces that the real battle begins now. Then he orders everyone to check their weapons and take a moment to catch their breath. While some soldiers rest, he strides purposefully through their camp. Moving away from the group, he heads alone toward the entrance of the dark forest. With a serious face, he notices strange movement coming from within the woods. Stopping at the edge of the path, he stares into the darkness, waiting for what is coming. With a slight smile on his face, he awaits the arrival of his next threat. Suddenly, a horde of monstrous creatures emerges from the darkness of the great forest. To succeed in the operation, 3 regiments were needed to cleanse the area. Leading the attack, the 1st Regiment advanced directly into the heart of the land. Meanwhile, Katrina prepared for battle, mounted on her horse with a spear. With the 2nd Regiment, she was in charge of protecting the group's rear. Suddenly, a massive horde of monsters crested the horizon, charging in their direction. The creatures surged forward in massive numbers, rushing straight for the front line. On the front line, a soldier blocked a punch from the creature with his shield. The impact of the blow shoved the soldier back forcefully. Then, a spear burst through the shield from behind, aimed right at the monster. The spear found its mark, piercing the creature's face and making it scream in pain. The force of the strike sent the monster flying backward through the air. Just then, another creature charged forward, swinging a heavy weapon. Arriving at high speed, Katrina intercepted the attack and cut down the creature in her path. After the precise strike, she continued riding through the battlefield. Turning to her soldiers, she yelled that the 1st Regiment would die if they failed. She screamed at them to fight like they had 2 lives and hold the line. With the regiment's advance, the frightened monsters began to flee towards the border. The 3rd Regiment's mission was to stop them from reaching the capital. Seeing the targets approaching, an archer shouted the order for everyone to fire. Then, a massive volley of arrows rained down on the monster horde. The arrows pierced the creatures, hitting them squarely and making them shriek in agony. He yelled at his men not to stop, ordering them to keep firing without hesitation. Shouting again, he warned that if they stopped now, the 1st Regiment would die. This was because the 1st Regiment was fighting surrounded by monsters in the heart of the borderland. That's why he ordered them to endure, repeating the command to fire relentlessly. Amidst the chaos, the soldiers of the 1st Regiment continued to fight bravely. With a swift movement, one deflected a creature's attack, blocking the blow. A warrior withstood another attack, stopping the monster's weapon with his great shield. Even wounded, he yelled for the monsters to come at him with everything they've got. Watching the fight, a soldier remarked that Zaltorin was truly a great fighter. Holding his sword, he said he wished he could fight as well as the others. He then lamented, asking why he wasn't born with any talent for fighting. Just then, a soldier yelled that the central unit was collapsing, ordering them to hold the formation. Looking at the chaos, he realized there was no one who could help now. Before the line of defense, he saw his comrades struggling to hold back the monsters. In despair, a warrior shouted that he couldn't take it anymore and begged for any help. Going back in time, the scene shifted to a training yard full of dummies. In that place, the commander stood before him as he lay on the ground. Helping him up, the commander asked why he always got beaten in training. He then explained that the sword itself was already showing him how not to get hit. Telling him to stop running, the commander warned that a sword always wants to fight. After hearing that, the blade of his sword began to react during training. With his sword in hand, he remembered the advice to fight, not flee. Focused on his training, he executed a powerful horizontal slash with his sword. Back in the battle, the creature charged and attacked the shield wall. Baring its teeth, the monster prepared to deliver a fatal blow. Then it struck from above, trying to crush the warrior with its arm. Without retreating, the warrior faced the creature's attack, waiting for the right moment. In that moment, he realized he finally understood what must be done. With his eyes shining, he said he could now see everything clearly. He understood where to strike, knowing exactly how he must cut to win the fight. Moving forward, he passed the creature and landed a precise slash on its body. After executing the strike, he stopped and observed the result of his attack. Surprised, he looked at the sword in his hand, was now glowing with energy. Just behind him, the commander clenched his fist, satisfied with what he just saw. Patting him on the shoulder, the commander congratulated him on his great achievement in the fight. He explained that it was a secret technique learned 10,000 years ago. With a smile, the commander said he had talent and just needed to listen. Hearing the praise, the young warrior was speechless, surprised by what he heard. He rested a hand on the young man's head, comforting him for having succeeded in protecting someone. After a week of intense battles, the mission's result was finally revealed. Celebrating their success, they managed to eliminate 70 of the monsters in the region. With their objective achieved, the mission was completed and they returned to the castle. Stretching in relief, he said that nothing was better than coming home. With his hand on the doorknob, he prepared to open the hall door. Opening the door, he entered and called everyone for a meeting before they ate. Inside the room, he found everyone seated at the table, the atmosphere heavy with tension. Completely confused, he asked why the mood was so strange. He then asked why the soldier was covering his face with his hand. Trying to hide his face, the soldier tried to stammer out an explanation for his brother. Losing his patience, he pulled the soldier's hand away and demanded to see his face. With wide eyes, he was shocked to see what had happened to him. He pulled the hand away, revealing the soldier's large black eye. The scene shifted to a bar where he asked who did that to the soldier. Sitting at the counter, the man responsible for the assault calmly drank from his glass. The scene changes, showing a small village with old-style buildings. Walking along the stone streets, he crosses the village toward his destination. Back in the room, he insists on asking who attacked him. A soldier is surprised to hear that even Ribera was beaten. She explains that Baron was disciplining warriors when an old man picked a fight with him. After that, Ribera went to confront him and came back just as injured from the scuffle. Furious, he questions how they could dare to hit his younger brother. The scene shifts to a tavern where someone is praising the old man, calling him incredible. Inside, warriors ask who that old man is capable of defeating Baron like that. With a mug in his hand, the old man just lets out a long, loud laugh. Suddenly, he stops and looks to the side, noticing someone's arrival. Arriving at the tavern, the commander asks if he is the man he's been looking for. Standing in the middle of the room, the two face each other in front of everyone present. He says it's a pleasure to finally meet him, as if he'd been waiting for this. Confirming he was waiting, he introduces himself as Zahir in the service of King Harun. Confused, he questions what the old man just told him. Meanwhile, the other patrons in the bar start to gossip about what's happening. He gets straight to the point, asking why a renowned expert would beat his men like that. Laughing, the old man admits he got carried away, but that he is there as a messenger. He then proposes they join forces so that everyone can benefit. He says Harun will take care of the ruins to generate even greater profits for everyone. With this proposal, he would only need to accept 30% of all profits. Surprised, the commander can't believe the proposal being made to him. He then asks if that's really a good deal for him, suspicious of the offer. The commander replies with a smile, asking if he really thinks he would accept. Zahir offers protection, guaranteed rule over the city, and a life of peace. Ironically, he thanks him for the proposal, saying that it sounds simply wonderful. Then he asks if Zahir really thought he would say yes to the offer. Without waiting for an answer, he lunges forward and punches the old man right in the face. The force of the blow sends the old man flying backward, crashing down hard. Leaning against the crates, the old man lies on the ground with no strength to get up. With his sword in hand, he tells the old man to take that message to the king. The scene changes to a grand mansion standing majestically on a quiet sunny day. Back in the room, he explains that King Vendival demanded submission, and he refused. He says the king wanted his profits, but would later demand his troops as well. Recalling the past, he says it would be just like what Cassius did to him. With a hand on his chest, he vows not to make the same mistake again. Even though he's confident of victory, he says he fears his allies might get hurt. Sitting in his chair, he turns and says he wants to hear everyone's opinion. Glancing to the side, he tells them that if they are afraid, they can retreat from the battle. Seeing their reaction, he wonders why everyone is looking at him that way. A woman questions his passive attitude, saying they have always lived on the edge. Katrina says the burden of the kingdom belongs to everyone and that they are with him. She then asks His Highness, Ranson Venroa, to take the lead and guide them. With a smile, he realizes that everyone is there for him at this moment. With his hands clasped, one of the men swears he will follow any order he gives, but he asks for honesty, questioning if they can really win the fight against Harun. With a confident smile, the commander says he certainly doesn't see himself losing. The soldier agrees, saying he trusts him with his life and asks for double pay. With a smirk, he finds the soldier's mercenary oath of loyalty amusing. He then decides they will also hurry to capture the city of Kashu. The soldier asks when they will leave, guessing it will take about 3 days. Without hesitation, he replies that no. They will leave for the mission tomorrow. Giving the order, he commands the emergency bell to be rung to gather all the troops. Shifting to a camp at night, the king is laughing at the news. Sitting in his tent, the king asks if Zahir was really thrown out like that. With a bruised face, Zahir asks the king not to laugh at his situation. The king calls him impressive, questioning how he couldn't even dodge the punch. Zahir says he doesn't even remember and that he woke up already outside. The king then concludes that Ranson is incredible since Zahir could kill a master. Zahir then states that he seems to have far surpassed that level. Agreeing, the king says he also seems to have a very strong temper. He then describes him as a wild beast, a truly untamable creature. With a smile, he says, there are people who don't open their hearts. The scene changes to a valley with several moons in the sky at dawn. From the tower, he says that this kind of person only listens to the sound of horses. They then gather in the courtyard, ready for the impending departure. Shocked by the news, he asks if the city has already been sold to the king. Moving to the city of Canolo, bodies are scattered across the streets. In their armor, knights patrol the empty city streets on horseback. Afraid, the residents hide and watch the movement through their windows. Seated on his throne, the king observes the great hall of his new castle. With a cloth, he slowly wipes the blood from his sword's blade. With a contemptuous smile, he refers to his enemies as fools. Stepping on a body, he asks if they thought he stood still out fear. He explains that the Empire's intelligence network was a major nuisance, but he says that having the vampire as his subordinate makes everything more convenient. Zahir says he is a man of great resourcefulness and skill with information. The king says he was surprised when Kesarus sought him out, asking to carry his banner. Zahir explains that Kesarus knew he wouldn't survive a war against them. Therefore, he concludes that Kesarus is much smarter than Ranson. With a smile, the king says he's curious to see Ranson's expression. Sitting on the throne, he decides he will give him one more chance. Giving the order, he commands a letter to be sent to Ranson before Kashu. Zahir then asks what the content of the message should be. With a smile, the king simply replies that the letter will contain an ultimatum. Changing scenes, he observes the great castle of Kashu City from a distance. He finds it impossible that the Gale King's army has already reached the location. According to the map, the distance covered would indicate a physically impossible speed for an army. Seeing the banner, he concludes that Kesarais must have set the stage to receive them. Then he realizes the banner is just a bluff to make him retreat. His captain warns that they need to fall back as attacking there would mean a declaration of war. With a smile, he scoffs at the idea of starting a war over a banner. In a memory, Kesara says the city of Kashu has always been his. Fallen and bloodied, he appears completely defeated on the staircase steps. Back in the present, he orders Celtic to take command of the entire unit. He then declares that he will take Kesara's head and open the gates. Running alone, he advances at high speed towards the immense castle. Reaching the wall, he leaps nimbly, ready to invade the castle alone. A guard shouts for him to stop, warning that Kashu is now the king's territory. He lands in the courtyard and stops, looking around with a serious expression. Ignoring the warning, he continues walking slowly towards the castle entrance. Annoyed, the guard yells, asking if he can't see the king's banner. In a combat stance, he prepares to advance regardless of the threat. The guard warns that any advance will be considered an act of direct hostility. Without a word, he leaps towards the guard ready to attack. With his sword in hand, he prepares to deliver the first blow against them. Lunging forward, he cuts the banner the guard was holding in a swift motion. Startled, the guard screams in fear, surprised by the speed of his attack. Looking at the guard on the ground, he asks where the banner he mentioned is. Stepping on the flagpole, he continues running towards his objective. With his new abilities, he feels his body is lighter, getting there in no time. Seeing the invasion, a guard points and shouts for the archers to shoot him. Surrounded by arrows in the air, he prepares to defend himself with his sword. Holding his sword firmly, he concentrates his strength for the next move. With a single circular strike, he manages to deflect all the arrows at once. Terrified, a guard screams to the others, saying he's a monster. Then a knight says victory will be theirs if each of them lands a blow. Hearing the order, several specialists advance together to join the attack against him. Using an enemy as a foothold, he leaps higher, saying he'll make good use of it. Watching everything, a young soldier says this whole situation is complete madness. Shouting, a warrior warns that he can't dodge, telling everyone to attack now. Twisting in midair, he uses the enemy's strike to propel himself downward. Shocked, the knight says that's beyond the level of a swordmaster. After landing, he touches the ground to absorb the impact of his fall. With the force of his arrival, the nearby window shatters into pieces. Standing up, he surveys his surroundings, a broken sword at his feet. Inside the hall, he says he didn't expect to be back here after killing Delkashu. Suddenly, a group of men appears, and he remarks that he didn't expect to meet them again. Drooling with rage, the berserker warrior glares at his opponent, baring his teeth. He remembers them, saying they were the most persistent when he fought before. But with a determined look, he states that things are very different now. In a fury, the group charges forward, their leader ready to strike with his axe. Dodging to the side, he manages to escape the blow that hits the ground. With a swift attack, he delivers several cuts that hit the berserker squarely. Defeated, the berserker falls to the ground, his bloodied axe beside him. After the fight, he opens a large door entering a dark hall. Sitting in a chair, Kesarus greets him asking if he has arrived already. With a serious expression, he faces the man who watches him intently. Pouring a cup, Kesarus invites him to sit and have some tea with him. With a smile, Kesarus says a cup of tea is the least he can do. Without warning, he attacks, delivering a swift slash towards Kesarus. Startled, Kesarus drops the cup, which shatters on the table. He warns that Kesarus talks too much after touching what is his. Outside, the guards anxiously await their leader's return. Suddenly, he returns and throws Kesarus's head in front of them. Holding it out, he offers the head as proof of his victory at the castle. Faced with the outcome, he asks if the guards still wish to fight. Shocked, a guard says that's impossible as only 10 minutes have passed. In just 10 minutes, he managed to invade the castle and return with the head. With a serious expression, he warns that he'll kill every last one of them if they continue to fight. Without hesitation, the guards surrender and prepare to open the gates. Following orders, all the soldiers immediately throw their weapons to the ground. With their surrender, the great castle gates finally begin to open. The scene changes. A large white tower stands under a calm sunny sky. Looking out the window, he observes the landscape of the city he has just conquered. A soldier informs him that the city will be in their hands in just 3 days. With a smile, he says he can finally breathe a sigh of relief with this victory. But the soldier warns him, saying the king's flag will cause trouble. Unconcerned, he questions what the problem is with the flag being there. He then says they would have faced them anyway sooner or later. Shocked, the soldier doesn't understand how he can say that so easily. At that moment, the soldier realizes he is the most terrifying man of all. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and he tells the person to enter. Entering, a soldier reports they've discovered a strange place while searching for supplies. He explains that the place looks like an abandoned building, but inside, it's a chapel. With a smile, he celebrates saying that there was a chapel here too. Giving the order, he commands them to leave the chapel as it is and forbid entry. With his arms crossed, he decides to put aside the time travel for now. With a determined look, he states that he'll deal with King Heron first. He sends Kalsirik near the castle as cutting down the flag will have consequences. In position, the scouts watch the city from afar waiting for any enemy movement. Leading the group, the warrior Pirje says he must be a madman. She can't believe he ignored the flag and captured the city of Kashu with a smirk. She wonders if he has 10 lives to be so bold. Mounted on her horse, she says they will show him their lord's final mercy. Without hesitation, the warrior charges forward on her horse, leading the group of knights. Leading her men, the troop rides at high speed toward their destination. Seeing them approach, a guard shouts a warning that the enemy is getting close. Riding on, the warrior gets closer and closer to the enemy camp's wall. From atop the wall, the archers receive the order to fire on the riders. Then a volley of arrows is fired, flying through the air toward the group. Bracing herself, the warrior prepares to dodge the imminent arrow attack. With agility, all the knights manage to dodge the arrows at high speed. Seeing they are about to collide, a terrified guard screams, warning of the imminent impact. With a great leap, the warrior jumps over the wall still mounted on her horse. Clearing the wall, the knights soar through the air with their horses. Confused, a guard asks if Ilnian's white horse can fly. Flying over the camp, the Gale King's cavalry advances relentlessly. Landing on the wall, the horsewoman observes the city from a distance with the castle in the background. With a smile, she celebrates the success of her bold approach to the camp. Taking a deep breath, she prepares to deliver her king's message. With a furious expression, she yells so that everyone can hear the message. In a loud voice, she announces that this is a message from King Harun. She warns that Kanalo has already fallen and this place will be next. With the proposal, she says that Ranson will be treated as a brother and a friend, but she warns that if he refuses, they will all become prisoners and criminals. Suddenly, a soldier leaps toward her ready for combat. Drawing his weapon, the soldier calls her a bitch, furious at the threats. Leaping into the air, he attacks with his weapon, delivering a powerful blow. Concentrating his energy, the soldier prepares an attack with all his might. At this, the white horse is startled and rears back from the approach. With the movement, the horse kicks out, blocking the soldier's attack. After the defense, the horse and rider prepare for their next move. With a powerful kick, the horse strikes the soldier squarely, sending him flying. Lying on the ground, the soldier looks up to see the horsewoman standing still on the wall. With a scornful smile, she lets out a scoff at his attitude. Turning around, she observes the city in the distance, preparing to deliver her message. Shouting loudly, she warns that she will wait for a good answer from Ranson Venroa. From inside the castle, he watches everything through the window with a serious expression. Hearing the message loud and clear, he realizes he is now really screwed up. With a determined look, he declares that from now on, it's war against Haroon. Mounted on his horse, he encounters the enemy army on a forest road. Leading his own army, he calmly rides towards the approaching enemy commander. Smiling, Commander Haroon approaches to start a conversation with his rival. Waving a hand, he greets Ranson, saying it's good to see him. He then asks why his offer was rejected, saying it hurt his feelings. He answers bluntly, a dragon cannot be commanded by a dog. With a hand to his face, Haroon starts laughing loudly at the response. Unfazed, he warns that he'll cut off the heads of half his men. Haroon smirks and tells him to reconsider, asking which one of them is the real dragon. Angered by the response, Haroon shouts for his cavalry, ready to attack. Seeing their leader's reaction, the knights roar in response, ready for battle. With a hand on his chest, he gives the order for all his soldiers to advance. Leading the charge, Haroon advances with his spear poised to strike. Without retreating, he stands his ground facing the oncoming cavalry. Seeing their formation, he shouts for his heavy infantry to advance. Ready for battle, the soldiers shout back, advancing with their shields raised. Giving the order, the back ranks ready their spears for the imminent attack. With bows in hand, the archers prepare to fire on the enemy. Observing the scene, he braces himself for the great battle that is about to begin. In a flashback, they analyze a map, planning their war strategy. According to the map, the Wind King's forces number 20,000 against their 14,000. She says that number already includes all available warriors, which puts them at a disadvantage. Even with fewer soldiers, he devises a strategy to secure victory. He says they need a decisive battle to take down the enemy commanders. With a confident smile, Katrina agrees with the proposed plan of attack. Believing in the strategy, the soldiers declare that they can win the war. He informs them that according to intelligence, 4 enemy generals have been mobilized. Assigning the first mission, he says Katrina must stop General Barkin. He then asks Zahir of the 100 victories to deal with the old man. The next mission goes to Ribera, who must handle General Jedak, the gambler. Finally, he says one soldier will face Brita of the Protection, the king's mistress. With a determined look, the soldier states that he will not lose to her. With the plan set, the commander says good to dismiss them. Clenching his fist, he affirms that he will stop the Wind King, Haroon himself. Back on the field, the enemy cavalry charges at high speed. In formation, the shield-bearers brace for the cavalry's impact. Shouting to his men, he gives one last order, telling them all to survive. Then the two armies surge toward each other, beginning the great battle. Mounted on his horse, General Barkin rides toward his opponent. On the other side, Katrina charges forward on her horse to intercept the enemy general. With a smirk, the general prepares for combat, gripping his massive weapon. With spear in hand, Katrina rides at full speed, ready for the fight. Raising his weapon, the general roars and charges forward with all his might. With a focused gaze, Katrina prepares for the impact of the two great warriors. Charging forward, the two riders clash, their weapons meeting with a violent impact. With a smile, the general is surprised she managed to block his attack. Without a word, Katrina glares at him with a serious expression, ready to fight. Excited, the general says this fight is getting interesting and prepares to strike again. Before they clash, he asks for her name. She replies, Katrina. Satisfied, he introduces himself as Barkin, one of the great generals of his army. The scene shifts to a battle taking place amid rocky, rugged terrain. With a hand on his chin, Jedak complains that he thought this would be an easy fight. With a smile, he decides he'll have to carve a path for his soldiers himself. Suddenly, an arrow grazes his face, nearly striking him. The cut leaves a mark on his cheek, bleeding slightly. Touching the cut, he realizes he didn't even hear the arrow coming. With a serious look, he wonders who the mysterious archer is. Hidden behind the shield wall, an archer prepares his next shot. Bow in hand, Ribera Pietro faces his opponent, ready for the duel. With a hand to his bleeding cheek, Jedak says the fight just got interesting. Elsewhere in the battle, soldiers fight bravely against the enemy army. With a determined look, a young warrior advances through the chaos of battle. Suddenly, he's startled to see his opponent approaching rapidly. Terrified, he shouts Zahir's name upon seeing him on the battlefield. With his sword resting on his shoulder, Zahir says, "You're that brat from before." Confused, Zahir asks why the boy is so angry with him. Advancing with his sword, the young warrior prepares to attack. Angrily, he says he's going to make him pay for that punch. With a powerful blow, the young man attacks, but Zahir easily blocks with his sword. With clenched teeth, he swears, "I'll get my payback today." The scene changes again, where the commander is charging across the field on his horse at high speed. With his bow, an enemy soldier tries to shoot him, yelling for him to stop. Using his skill, he easily dodges every arrow that comes his way. With a focused look, he prepares to attack the archer. With a precise cut, he takes down the soldier who falls to the ground, defeated. Mounted on his horse, he continues to charge across the battlefield without stopping. With a thrust of his spear, he runs another enemy soldier through. Getting closer, Harun shouts, asking if he's a fool for charging into his territory alone. Standing with his guards, Harun faces him, ready for their confrontation. Harun says that if he wanted to die, he could have just hanged himself. Uncaring, he questions Harun, asking, "What's wrong with that?" In the midst of the enemy army, he says that either way, he has finally found him. Surprised, Harun wonders why he's so afraid of the man in front of him.